Hi, I'm not hearing Talis at all. Tali, can you talk to us like in Latvian or English, or maybe tell us a joke what you learned yesterday?
That was a serious day yesterday.
Well, so it seems like you hear me, but I can't hear you. But anyway, the idea will be, so my introduction before we really start will be about like technicalities. So first of the thing is that each and every participant has to switch his or her mic, him or herself. So please use the icon that makes your sound. Unfortunately, we cannot operate your sound from the other side, from here. This is just because of the new updates of this program that we used, Zoom. So it means you have to switch on the microphone, and this is the way how we can hear you. So Tali, you can definitely switch on the microphone because you will be one of the first speakers. So all the rest of us, please mute your microphones. So or actually don't like make noise during the other colleagues' speeches. But when you will have your time and way to raise a question, then of course please put the microphone on, and then only then give us your thoughts or questions. And the other thing is, can I also suggest you maybe try to close not needed programs in your laptops, because there are different gigabytes needed programs to be running smoothly. It's not always the internet connection. Sometimes it's the Zoom that requires a lot of needs. So this is one of the things. The other thing is we will start very shortly, and I hope you at least hear me, and we will hear each of the speakers. So Tali, maybe try.
Yeah. Yes, can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, I hear you, Tali. Thank you. So hopefully the same goes to Ilona Menziņa and then to Mr. Besnik Mahmeti as well. Okay, well, anyway, it's just time. So it's 11 o'clock here in Latvia, and welcome to this new way and new outfit of these training and good practice sharing examples. Well, of course, you know yourself that you wanted to be here, and we here in Latvia very much wanted and hoped that you would come. But nevertheless, you will come during the project, hopefully, but not now. Well, that's the reality. By the way, actually from today here in Latvia, we started the new normal thinking and behavior. So government decided to lift these special requirements that we posed for our country and citizens for 16 weeks. So hopefully you are also in a safe place and in a good mood to work and to get to use to this new normal. New normal also means a lot of things, and maybe even some learnings you did on your own or by good experience of your colleagues here, which very much addresses now the project. We will now share experiences. So thanks a lot for those who already made a good homework, good practice examples that you will share to us. But this also is one of the first ways how we will probably behave for certain times and weeks. So let's see, it will be maybe during the whole project. We don't know. Anything is still unclear. The one thing is clear: Riga Technical University is not only happy, but also taking the lead of this example, organizing this event online. Let's see how it will run. At least up until now, we were the lucky country amongst one of the best speed internet and all that thing. So cross our fingers that technicalities of today will definitely work. So now I will pass the floor to Talis Juhna. He's actually vice rector for Riga Technical University, one of the most prominent universities here in Northern Europe, and very much focused on issues of today, of the measurements of the costs and benefits of ecosystem services derived by land use. So actually, taking reality of Latvia, I just recently heard that even if you take all 600,000 millions of the inhabitants of Europe and put with a distance of 2 meters each from other, it will be not filling fully Latvia still. We are such a kind of, sometimes you may take us as a small country. Actually, we are very big from the point of territory and density of inhabited land. So this is just one aspect, probably. There are more science in it when Tālis Juhne is looking at the project and the possible success which we need actually to achieve. So Tāli, the floor is yours for opening of today.
Okay, good morning. Thank you again for nice introduction. And indeed, we are a lucky country, not just during the crisis. We are lucky always because we live in such a nice green country with many waters and lakes. And so it's really my pleasure to welcome you on this virtual reality. Unfortunately, you are not able to visit us, all of you, today, but I hope during this 4-year project there will be opportunity for you to come to Latvia, to Riga, and also to visit our beautiful campus, which is just in the very heart of Old Town, basically, but on the nice island where we also have a very green area for students and for the professors. So I will just start by saying that, yes, I'm Vice Director for Research, but by training, I'm actually environmental engineer. I'm focusing very much on issues related to water, wastewater. So this topic, which is, the project is dealing with, is very close to my heart as a professional, not only as a Vice Director for Research. So I would first of all like to say a lot of thanks to all organizers for this event, and also for the project partners from Italy, Ireland, Hungary, Spain, Romania, and of course Latvian partners for bringing so many people together working on that topic about really measuring cost and benefit of ecosystem. And of course, thanks goes also to the municipalities and ministries, which are very important stakeholders when we talk about dissemination of the knowledge coming from the research institutions and universities. So about the topic, I think this topic is very challenging and very important. And let me just add a few words why I think so. Well, difficult, right? You know, we are talking about measuring value of ecosystem. I mean, this is something which is almost sounds impossible, because you have to take into account many aspects, like not just economical, not just technical, but cultural, and also social aspects. Just to give you a little bit one example from our history, 55 years has passed since we lost our legendary Staburaks cliff, which was a symbol actually of Latvian independence, and it was submerged because we built our hydroelectric power plant. So now, because of this plant, we have more than 25%, actually 30% of renewable energy, which is coming from this plant. So the question is, on one hand, you have a great economical benefits, and I think now when we're talking about the Green Deal, this is our advantage because we have the plant. But on the other hand, we have some sentiment towards our symbols, like Staburaks cliff. So I think just to emphasize, this is one example how difficult really to estimate values, both economically, socially, and culturally important. Another example is our Baltic Sea. Baltic Sea is one of the shallowest seas in the world, and it is heavily polluted. Why? Because there's been a lot of economical activities going around the Baltic Sea, both agriculture, both industries. As a result of this contamination, that the economical value to fishery was lost. Again, there's another trade-off how we can address this issue. So I think that what you are doing is very important and is very challenging. Regarding importance, I think when you talk about ecosystem services. We just not dealing about agriculture system. We talk about forestry, grassland, aquatic systems. So it's a combination of all these aspects. And I think what we have managed, unfortunately, not so well during last 50 years, that we managed to change our system more rapidly and extensively than in any comparable period of human history. So it's just in 50 years. So, and of course, there are many initiatives like Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, like run by United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan, which is also starting the, well, running already Millennium Development Goal Initiative. So I think these things are very much related really to understand how we have to deal with these issues. Because of the economical growth, we want to gain benefit from environment, but on the other hand, we have to deal also with deterioration of environment and climate change. So again, I really appreciate that this project has started, and I think Riga Technical University can add a lot of value to this project, since as a university, we are very much focused not only on engineering, but we also focused on ecology and entrepreneurship. So we have many programs about how to really build new economy, which is sustainable. So there are many scientists besides which are present here, working, for example, with bioeconomy issues, working how to measure sustainability, for example, using XG concepts, etc. And also we are part, as I said, part of the Millennium Development Goal Initiative, specifically focusing on water and energy issues. So again, I think this project is just started. You are, so we are very happy that we host the first event, and I believe that there's a lot of expectations from this project. And understand it's not just a scientific value, but it's also the value which could be turned into the political guidelines, political discussion about how to deal with different aspects of our ecology. So I really hope that this first meeting will bring new ideas and also generate a kind of environment among you partners, so you can work for next 3-4 years efficiently together, and then come up with some very tangible results, so our political partners can use them, using your evidence-based approach in their political decisions. So thanks again. I welcome everyone, and hope you enjoy this meeting. We can hear you.
To our distinguished Vice Dean, Vice Rector of Riga Technical University, then raise your virtual hand so I can see it in a list of participants in the screen. And actually, during today, this will be the way also how to raise your hand. So you go to the participants list, and then there is a choice of doing some things, which might be, for example, raising hand means I have a question to immediate or actual speaker, which technically, you know, you also have to remove when you did your question. So this is not us who are deleting replied questions. Or can I also remind you that before you speak, please turn on your camera, turn on your microphones, and the next speaker is actually doing so. So I don't see immediate questions to Tali, so this makes Tali, thank you. I know you have to leave, so please take your responsibilities of today. Now we go to, let's say, the real outcome, which is very much hopeful information for at least the government of Latvia. Talis was mentioning that Riga Technical University is very close to Riga city center, the political center of our country, actually, which technically means also very close, like geographically, but also I think in meaning to Ministry of Environmental Protection and Regional Development. And there I see Ilona Menziņa. She actually works for that ministry's Environmental Protection Department. And Ilona, so what would be the best outcomes or best solutions scientists from around Europe could propose to you? I mean, we are always referring that we are living here in the north. Do you think the Mediterranean good practices could also work here up in north of Europe? So how hopeful you are to the project? And thank you for being involved here.
Good morning. I hope that you can hear me. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfectly. Yes. In replying to your question, that I think that is the beauty of ecosystem approach. That it doesn't matter what is the ecosystem. You can evaluate those services and you can compare them. And then if you express them in the monetary value, you can perfectly compare monetary value of ecosystem services in Mediterranean and North. But coming back a bit to the ecosystems and their use in Latvia, I also will be happy to welcome every participant here in Riga that Live has made some corrections. Nevertheless, I would like to join to those wishes expressed just by Mr. Jukna, that you will all have the chance to come sometime to Latvia and explore this beautiful country. Speaking of which, Latvia occupies 1.5% of the total EU territory, and here lives less than 1% of the EU population. However, more than half of the territory of Latvia is covered by forest, and this makes Latvia one of the top 5 most forested countries in Europe. Latvia has more than 2,000 lakes, and our rivers stretch more than 38,000 kilometers long. Latvia has almost 500 kilometers of sandy beaches, and our bogs occupied almost 10% of the country's territory, agricultural land almost 30%, and all this is covered by protected area, which occupy 80% of the terrestrial area. I'm sure you hardly grasp the figures, but the listing was to illustrate that we have everything except high mountains. Till the recent time, the main contradictions were between production and non-use values of ecosystems. As everywhere in Europe, we cut the forest, intensify our agriculture. We also use the bogs for peat excavation. But more and more often, nature reminds us that we have to consider also other options for the ecosystem use. A few years ago, we faced severe rains in late summer. All fields were flooded, but the least damage was done to grasslands. Last 2 years were also very hot and dry, and instead of facing abundance of water we used to have, some areas faced droughts, but some areas, due to a large proportion of bogs, did better because of the water accumulated in bogs. This spring, suddenly, the recreational and health benefits provided by different ecosystems proved to be very important. All this illustrates that none of the ecosystem services should be neglected when we make our decisions. Latvia has not been a very active participant of the European MICE initiative, and all our ecosystems are not mapped and evaluated yet. However, we have made few important steps to set the conditions for the evaluation of our ecosystems. This year we will finish the biophysical mapping of EU habitats, and mapping is done in the whole country. Thus, we will know precisely the extent of nature features on which we have the legal obligations for protection and very wise use. I have tested several approaches for evaluation of the ecosystem services, and you will hear about more about these later today. Recently, we have made a study which, surprisingly for everybody, proved that investments into habitat restoration show better cost-benefit ratio than hard investments into drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. We have developed the scientifically justified algorithm for setting the quantitative conservation objectives for species and habitats. However, there is still plenty of room for learning from different players in the EU on their experience on the evaluation of the ecosystems and their services, on incorporation of these evaluations into decisions, and more importantly, into decision-making procedures, on less visible ecosystem services, on awareness building on importance on non-use value of ecosystems, and more and more. Therefore, projects like Progress and their results provide next building blocks into building named our sustainable future. I wish you, all of us, a fruitful meeting where a lot of new information will be shared and gained, and plenty of new ideas for future trainings and experience sharing on cooperation will be born. Thank you.
Immediate replies to Ilona's hopes, let's call it hopes, but we promised that during the length of this project, of course, there will be outcomes that will be useful, maybe in some fragments or maybe fully to different countries involved. And I think this is the beauty, that even if we do not have, as you told, these high mountains, we actually have like good friends around the continent, and we can share their immediate experience or future possible behavior. Well, anyway, the good idea of the Progress project itself, which actually invites us to spend this full day of intense, hopefully intense discussions as well, is actually like the baby child, still not a teenager or adult, probably. I think that might be one of the feelings to this very project from Mr. Besnik Mahmeti. He's a lead partner of the Progress project, actually represents the Florence, so Tuscany Association of Municipalities. And would you please explain us, Mr. Mehmeti, the whole concept of what you were, let's say, dreaming about when you were just drawing the possible cooperation that you established here in this, and then what would be, what would make you happy today, if you can set also the possible outcomes of today for us, not only describe the whole meaning of the project, please.
Thank you very much for your introduction. I'd like to welcome all participants to our first training seminar, and thank also to our distinguished panelists to be here. I am very surprised to see a huge number of participants. At the moment there are 62, and this is a great number and shows the interest of everybody on the topic of biodiversity and ecosystem services. I'd like to share my screen, as I have a PowerPoint presentation. Perhaps this is I'm able to do that. Okay. Okay. However, I will start then, and I'll try to share my screen in a minute.
Yes, because we don't see it yet. So is it like in your side, or
host? It says host disabled attendee screen sharing. So it seems that.
Okay, we will change the settings in our side so that you will be able to do it. Okay, we'll do it very quickly. The host will allow you to do it, so you can start.
So talking about biodiversity and ecosystem services and climate change, these topics were at the center of the 2020 World Environment Day that was promoted last week by the United Nations, and now in its 46th edition. In the background of this day, the pandemic COVID-19 situation that brought the planet's Cinderella back to the center of the world attention, so the nature. And the UN Secretary, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres clarified in his message that nature spoke to us loud and clear through the pandemic emergency. I'm citing him. He told us that our ecosystem is sick and that we must act as soon as possible to restore it. And there is a direct link between the pandemic, the pollution caused by the climate change, the impoverishment of biodiversity on the planet. And that's the reason why all 2020 is dedicated to the biodiversity. Biodiversity is the foundation that supports all life on land and below water. It affects every aspect of human health, providing clean air and water, nutritious foods, scientific understanding and medicine sources, natural disease resistance, and climate change mitigation. Changing or removing one of the elements of this web affects the entire life of this ecosystem and can produce negative consequences. Here, the human actions, including deforestation, encroachment of wildlife habitats, intensified agriculture, and acceleration of climate change are pushing nature beyond its limits. And it would take 1.6 Earths to meet the demands that humans make of nature every year. And if we continue in this path, biodiversity loss will have severe implications for humanity, including the collapse of food and health systems. In fact, the emergence of COVID-19 has underscored the fact that when we destroy biodiversity, we destroy the system that supports human life. And these are, introduction is, to give a little bit the sense of the project and the reasons that were on the basis of the involvement and commitment of our partners in this project. If I can share the screen, perfect, I can now. Yeah. So skipping the first, let's say, slide that is about some facts on biodiversity. I would say that the overall objective of the project is to improve the implementation of regional policies and strategies that are dedicated to the conservation of biodiversity and the maintaining of the nature capacity to deliver the goods and services that all we need. By the way, the ecosystem services through policy learning and capacity building activities. The policy instruments that are tackled by the project are an ERDF operational programs. Are ERDF operational programs or at national or regional level, and other strategies dealing with the protection of and the value of biodiversity and ecosystem services.
Sorry, Mr. Besnik, something happened. We saw your first slide of the presentation, and then we see now a very black screen. So maybe there is a other thing you actually shared to us. Should you press again to the slides you want to share, and then it will appear for us? Like we kind of see you, hear you, but don't see the slides. Nevertheless, we saw your first slide, actually.
Okay, just a second.
Should you like try to share it once more, and then maybe it works? Sorry for this. It always makes some nasty things. So we try to put it with a smile. Huh? Sorry, guys, if something appears during today, don't take it personal. That's the internet.
Yeah, in fact, stop share. Let me see.
Like when you put the share, try to share once more your slide you prepared for us. Because we saw only the first, actually, the introduction part, and then it appeared the black screen. Ah, here it is. Yes, now we see it. Thank you.
Great,
so you continue.
So as I was saying, we have a list of policy instruments that are mainly operational programs at the regional or national level funded by the ERDF, so the European Regional Development Fund, or other strategies that deals with the conservation of biodiversity and ecosystem services at the regional level. The decline, of course, of these natural assets is considered a major challenge. So that's why these policy instruments are dealing with this topic and they feel the urgent need to improve the relevant regional policies and provide multi-stakeholder solutions for protection and sustainable use of the natural capital. Yeah, can you see still my slide, right? The approach proposed by the project is based on policy learning and capacity building of the partner organizations and the involvement, of course, of the regional stakeholders. Here is a plus to stimulate a collective, multidimensional and dynamic exchange of experience. In doing so, we will deal with 4 topics that you can see in the slide. The first, and about which we are dealing today, is about the costs and benefits of ecosystem services derived from land use. But the next topics of the next events will be the integration of the ecosystem concerns into sectoral policies and plans, the innovative financial and marketing mechanism for payment of ecosystem services, and then landscape governance for economic and environmental sustainability. Our project is based around 2 main phases. The first one deals with the interregional learning process and have a duration of 3 years. During this phase, we organize training seminars, thematic seminars on exchanging good practices, and on the basis of these seminars, partners, through the learning they take, they develop action plans to improve the policy instruments that I mentioned before. And then the second phase is mostly focused on monitoring the implementation of the action plans developed by the partners. Just to also give, let's say, a hint about also the partners of the project, ANCI Toscana is the Association of Tuscan Municipalities in Tuscany, in Florence, and is the lead partner of the project. Then other partners are Riga Technical University, who is hosting today this meeting, the Eastern and Midland Regional Assembly in Ireland, Tolna County Development Agency in Hungary, CREAF, the Ecological Research and Forestry Application Center in Catalonia, in Spain, and the University of Craiova in Romania. And here in the map of Europe, you can see the distribution of our partnership. And coming to the end of my presentation, I would like to share with all the participants the website of the project and to our library, when you can find the good practices that we'll share from semester to semester. Our first newsletter is already online, so please subscribe through the link you see, the first link you see in my slide, and feel free to disseminate it to your stakeholders and contacts. I'd like to close my intervention by wishing to all participants a fruitful day, and hoping that everybody can pick up some takeaways from this training seminar to be applied in the daily life and work, of course. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, actually, and during today you will come up also with probably sum up at the very end. Now we will start to proceed with good practice examples, which hopefully will also provoke many questions. So let's do this way. Now we go with good practice example from Spain, from Barcelona, and I think this is the Stakeholder, the Territorial Information System for the network of open areas in the province of Barcelona. Of course, we know this is the very north of Spain, so it's a Mediterranean coast and different natural resources that you do have there. We'd like to see your idea, and after these slides, we will now see, and you can also see here, this is Carlos Castel. He's a natural area department, works for a natural area department for Provincial Council of Barcelona. Hi, welcome. And after, please, prepare your microphones or your questions for debate on the issue will be presented. So let's go to the very south of the other side of the continent from the point of view of Latvia, I would say. Hi.
Hi. Hello, good morning from very close to Barcelona, where I live, where I am confined, like most of us. It's a pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting us to share our experience in this project. And I hope it will be inspiring and useful for you. And I will give a broad presentation, not so much on technical aspects, that we already had a technical meeting a couple of months ago, more or less. And I will try to go more into the kitchen of the project, let's say, to try to explain how we managed to go with this project that hopefully it will be of interest for all of you. I don't know if you can see my presentation now. Yes, it's okay. Can you hear me and see my presentation? Okay, so this is the name of our project. This is a GIS, a Geographical Information System, to try to identify and to map and to assess natural values of our province. I work for the province of Barcelona, and as you will see later during the project, we started to incorporate many maps and assessment related to ecosystem services. So CICEL is the name of this GIS. So just to present a little bit our wonderful land. This is the province of Barcelona. As you told, Barcelona is one of the 4 provinces of Catalonia. Catalonia is the very northeast of Spain, so it's in the border with France in the north. So in our province there are more than 300 municipalities, and the government of the provinces, what we do is to give them support for many activities they have to develop, and one of the activities are related to natural areas planning and management, as you can see. So the extension of the province is around 8,000 square kilometers, and we are almost 6 million people there. So in a quite a small area of Catalonia, we are around 70% of people of Catalonia. So you can have an idea of the density and the socio-economical pressure on land and on natural areas. So that's why the provincial government, the Provincial Council of Barcelona, started with a policy of protection of natural areas in the 70s. In fact, the Diputació de Barcelona, the government of the province, declared the first natural park in Spain really back in the 70s, so almost 50 years ago. That was Sant Llorenç, that one, and then a couple of years later that was Montseny, the second one. And right now we are planning and managing a network of 12 protected areas around the region of Barcelona. This is the very dense populated region of Barcelona. So we have millions of visitors every year in these 100,000 hectares. So the management is very intensive, and with a lot of resources and technical experts working for this network of protected areas. So this is, let's say, our classical approach to protection, so to develop a network of protected areas. It's around 25% of the province protected, so just some images of Mediterranean landscape with very nice cultural heritage, with the Romanic art or geomorphological sites of interest. Can you see our parks up to almost 2,000 meters high, with some landscape more, remembering more Central Europe, that rear dry Mediterranean areas. And this is part of the network of Natura 2000 network in Catalonia. As you know, Catalonia is one of the most diverse regions in Europe. So we have a lot of habitats and species of interest for the directives, and more than 30% of the land in Catalonia is protected, with more than 180 areas in the Natura 2000 network. So this is more or less the background. And around 2003, more or less, we started that project, Spatial, that the main characteristics or the main goals of the project was to give support for land analysis and planning decisions, both for municipalities. This is let's say the level of the administration closer to citizens, and the regional government of Catalonia. We are just in the middle, so we are trying to give information and advice to that two public administration who have the responsibilities and really the competences to approving plans and all that. And we were interested in all the open areas, all the natural areas, not only the protected ones, because we saw that just with 30% it was not enough. So we needed a very strong network of protected areas, but we needed more than that. So more or less, we were talking about green infrastructure, let's say that at that time already, not in these words, but we were interested in the whole land. And from the very beginning, we were sure that we should start it in coordination with all the other public administration and private partners. So it's very difficult to set up a GIS, and it's even more difficult to update and to have information to have that GIS updated. If you do not have it in this way, it makes no sense, because the land is changing and so quickly. So we started from the very beginning our work as promoters of the project, but working from the very beginning with all the stakeholders. And the other thing we were really convinced from the very beginning is that was not our information, was not our GIS project. It's a public project. So we started from the very beginning disseminating all the information was possible from the very beginning, just to download all the maps and to use both from public and private as stakeholders. So it's a GIS, so it's just a central scheme with all the information. This means maps and databases and all that. Coming from the work together from external experts, really experts in the different aspects related to natural areas, from universities, research center, private sector, etc., and our experts. So experts in land planning and land management. So with our work together, I will show some examples, we fit this GIS scheme for this main objectives. This is to give all that data free of charge from the very beginning. So all that data are available for everybody. And you see that at the same time, we wanted to use this data to raise the awareness of society about the values of natural areas. And of course, we use from more a technical point of view, this information in all our projects, from the lowest scale at municipal level up to regional, Spanish and European projects. So this information is really useful at different scales of work. So it's a GIS with different parts. These are the classical ones, so that we haven't invented anything, but geology, flora, fauna, connectivity, landscape ecology, socioeconomy, etc. And just some examples that our work with experts from research centers and university was to try to transform really scientific information in practical information that could be used in land planning and analysis. This is an example how, starting from a habitats map, we have habitats map with a very nice 150,000 scale with detailed maps of all the habitats we have in the province, with the names and species that we can find there. But we wanted to transform this in a map of value. So we work with experts, in this case with botanists and experts in habitats, and we at the end we decided to take a list of 12 different parameters to assess the quality of the habitat, and those 12 variables together were mixed to set up this map. This is just a map of value for conservation. This means darkest the spot it is, the highest the value of that habitat is in terms of state of conservation, endemicity, degree of vulnerability, etc., etc. There are many different indexes behind this map, and this is the same for all the maps. So we wanted to transform just description maps from the scientific point of view into practical maps of identification and assessment of natural values. This is an example of how we converted the map of the cartography of nesting bird species into the value of the land for these species, depending on how many species we had, the category of IUCN, of danger, and all these. So maps of connectivity, the same with different kind of models of land connectivity. And this is an example of how we transformed the maps we had about crops and forests and that, taking into account in this case the characteristics referred to production, to value for productivity, etc., etc. So that was a map of what we call the dynamism of agriculture and forestry. So how important it is and how valuable was from the socio-economical point of view. So there are hundreds of maps. Don't be afraid, I will not show all of them. So just some examples of what we are talking about. And around 5 years ago, well, after the communication from European Commission in 2013 about ecosystem services and green infrastructure, we decided to try to map ecosystem services following methodologies and all the indications from the Commission. And so we had so much information about our land and our natural areas that was not difficult. It was just to take the information and to represent in other way. So using other changes, but it wasn't difficult. And just giving some example of what kind of maps we have at the provincial level. So some examples of ecological functions who are behind the ecosystem services. We have connectivity, biodiversity, or leaf biomass. This is the example. Leaf biomass is behind many ecosystem services, as one of them is air filtering. So how vegetation is filtering pollution from urban areas. This is an example of regulation service. Another regulation service that we map is pollination. So with some proxy indicators of abundance of invertebrates that are pollinators. Some other one related to climate change and global carbon stocks and fluxes. This is the map for carbon stocks. Some examples of provisioning services, so about fuel or about water. In this case is the provision of food coming from our crops in the province. And some cultural services that I have to say that are really difficult to map and to assess, but we have some examples of how we applied some models. And in this case is a model to try to map the recreation opportunities. So how good are areas to give recreation to people. So just some examples of what kind of information we have. So after that, this is the technical part. I would like to give you some ideas of how we managed to start and to go on with this project. So first of all, as I told to you, the idea started around 2003 in our technical office, where we were planning natural areas, and we thought at that time that we needed some criteria, some information to give support and assessment to planification, to planning all the land, not just protected areas. So we had the political opportunity. There was a law that was approved. I will not give more details, but we got the political opportunity to convince our political responsibles in our natural areas department about the opportunity of that project and how important could be for municipalities, for land, etc. and our political responsibles ask for support and resources to the presidents of the government of the province, because we needed the involvement of other areas, because it wasn't possible to do all alone. And that political responsibles, for instance, in case of areas of cartography or computing and technology in the provincial government, they shared the project with us. And once we had the political agreement, what we did was to create a close group with other experts from other areas, that we had meetings every time we need, around I don't know, once a month, so to try to have a very strong team inside of the provincial government. This could be like internal stakeholders, how we manage at that time the project. Referring to resources and cost effectiveness balance, that I know is really important, especially for people to have to take decisions about how we invest our money. Some data, I have to apologize because I'm working from home. Last 3 months, I have no access to all the information. This is the information of an assessment we performed in 2013, 10 years after starting the project. So I think that can give you a nice window of that 10 years that were really the growth of the project. The direct cost of the project in terms of contracts, I will see some examples, was around 3 million euros. It's a lot of money, I know. It's around 300,000 euros per year. This means hardware, software, all the contracts and agreements with all the external partners I will show you. And at that time, we already started with applicating that at different scales, as I told you, from local to European. And just for the projects we have yearly with municipalities, we have an estimation that we are saving for municipalities more than 100,000 euros per year. Just the money they save because they have that information and do not have to contract to external enterprises. It's difficult to calculate the cost in terms of social awareness and application in many kinds of projects at a regional level, dissemination, etc., etc. But just for you to have an idea of this, yeah. Related to our external relationship is just an image that you can see how many external partners we had, from university, research centers, NGOs, private companies, trade unions, other public administration. And the relationship with them was different depending on the nature of the stakeholder. So for academic partners, so we had a lot of agreements with universities, research centers specialized in some specific natural area items, let's say fauna, vegetation, ecology, etc., as well as from NGOs experts in some naturalistic items as well. In this case, we signed what we call a specific agreements. So this is not really a contract, it's an agreement based on public law, but with some economical balance. So we pay something to universities and to these NGOs, but it's not so expensive as a private contract. So we pay for, we do not have to pay for the structure. For instance, they have already paid that structure, which we just pay for the project, for the hours they dedicate to that. So it's really cheaper than a general contract. In case of specific private companies or private trade unions, as farmers, one that we work with them. In this case, really, we had special public contract. So it's a contract between a public and a private sector. But I have to say that the cost was not so high that a regular contract, because they were interested as well to have that information, because it was really interesting for them to keep this knowledge for other projects. So we had an agreement, so we can say the market price was not so high. And finally, for other public administration, our relationship with them through specific agreements without any economical content, with just exchanging knowledge, information, and that. And with all of these members, so probably around 30 people representing different stakeholders, we kept regular working meetings. So we had face-to-face meetings with each of them, but at the same time we had plenary workshop with all of them to share information for everybody to know what the others one were doing, and to have exchanging of ideas, and that was really very inspiring. So every year we had at least 2 meetings with plenary stakeholders. Just an example of one of the meetings we held at that time. With only this in mind, what about municipalities? Because are our main target, because we are a local administration. So what we did was to start with pilot projects. So we went to some municipalities that we know that we were interested in planning their municipality, taking into account these natural values, and we started with them as example of what we could do from under this new point of view. This is just an example of a pilot project. This is a local plan who took into account all the information we gave them about natural values. And that was the basis of the local plan. This was a complete change, because until that time, local planning was based in urban paradigm, let's say. So the city will grow this way, this other one will have a new road. So in this case, natural areas were really important, were really one of the keystones, of the milestones of the project. And after that, after a couple of years of pilot projects, we gave this support for all the municipalities of the province. So they could apply and ask for free for this information for their municipalities through what we call a catalog of services. Every year we give that services, and this is a map, is an old map. We have many municipalities right now of all the municipalities that voluntarily they apply for the support, and they took that information to take it to account for planning their municipality at local level. So a big change is absolutely voluntary. It's not compulsory to use this, but all these municipalities you can see here have already used that information for planning. So we are putting small pieces in the puzzle, in the image. We are working at municipal level, and I think it's important to start this bottom-up project. Many training courses for local experts. So to architects, to environmental experts working for municipalities. We were teaching them and training them of how to use that information and how to convert in planning and management projects. And when 5 years ago, we started to incorporate ecosystem services mapping into our GIS project, what we offer to municipalities is it's not just maps of values, but what we call maps of local green infrastructure. So we take all the ecosystem services at local level and we give them a map of green infrastructure. What areas are more important for production or for regulation or for protecting from risks or erosion, or for just to preserve because of natural values. So, and this local green infrastructure, as you can see the map on the right, this means that this is part of local planning. So these maps are part of local planning right now for many municipalities in our provinces. So green infrastructure is one of the pieces for constructing the local plan for the municipalities. And just some examples of projects that we started with some municipalities after that planning. So we have some resources to help them to have resources for some restoration or for some managing projects in their municipalities. So examples of how we transform some rivers with using natural solutions, or some forest recover after wildfires. These are examples of management of forests, Mediterranean forests, for more resilience for climate change. Examples of recovering areas for crops and for sheep and goats in this case. Some examples of agricultural areas as well. Some peri-urban areas that needed a very intense management. So you can give examples of natural areas that are really close to buildings. And I'm finishing I have talked about how we give support to municipalities. So the level just below us, that is our main target. But we help as well the regional government of Catalonia, because in 2008 they asked for support in the process of approving the plan for the whole region of Barcelona. That was a big change for the region, because we did not have any regional plan at that time, and was one of the problems we had, because many new urban settlements were appearing everywhere and changing soil, land uses, etc. And for the first time, we approve a plan for the region, and they asked us for an analysis to use for that plan. This was our map. And that's the result. And more than 70% of the region of Barcelona is protected right now because of the values, of natural values, and for ecosystem services values. So this is really a lot. I can swear that there's really a lot of land protected, 70% in a case of a region so dynamic as the region of Barcelona. So finally, just some data about in addition to working with other administration in projects of planning and management, how we reach the society, other stakeholders. So some data and ideas about outcomes and communication. This is general data. I can see that is that 10 years period up to 2013, more or less. At that time, we had 2/3 of municipalities in the province that already had consulted that information with 60 specific assessments. Right now, we are more than double. We are in around 130 assessments to municipalities. And at that time, we already meant that municipalities had approved 5 plans for protecting areas at local level, with more than 6,000 hectares protected by municipalities, not by the government of the region or the minister, no. Municipalities that protected, approved a plan for protection after seeing that information. In our work for, in our network of protected areas at the provincial government, during that 10 years, we approved 4 new plans of protection that meant 10,000 hectares protected that were not protected before. So enlargements and new natural parts, and because that the information we had about the values. And as I told you, this participation in the regional planning, that meant the protection of more than 200,000 hectares in the region of Barcelona. This is more of 70% of the region. So during all this period, we published many technical and dissemination brochures, papers, many technical workshops, training courses for municipalities. The professional website, I will show you now, the website received more than 50,000 visits last year with for downloading the information, more than 1 million visitors to the general website, presentations in master, in any international conference. So we try to be everywhere where it was possible to explain, to disseminate really the project. This is the website. You can see, you can find here a better explanation than mine now, I promise. And you can go through all the maps in these maps and products. All the cartography is available. This is the website address. And this is the map server. You can work here for consultation, or you can just download information in your GIS application. And what is important, I think, is that I think that part of the success is that behind this information, there are scientific teams. So the teams working at the university, they were presenting this information in scientific conferences. So this is not my map of values. This is not Carlos Castell assessment map for birds or for agriculture. No, it's from experts. They presented that as scientific papers. So I think that this scientific basis behind the maps was one of the main aspects of success, if I can say. So just examples of different publications, poster, toolkits, etc. And just to finish, so examples of participation in European projects like Interreg Green Infrastructure Network, Green Infranet, some years ago, transferred projects to other regions in Europe or other parts of the world. This is the case of a project in Chile, in South America. These open courses and workshops in many different environments, in many different contexts. And we applied, and we have we were lucky at that time because we won at that period 2 international awards that give us a lot of visibility. So the European prizes for public administration, the EPSA project in 2011, and in 2012 we won the public administration program of United Nations in New York. We were there for that award, especially for this transfer of information from science to real application for taking decisions. This is the aim of our project. So a lot of things in not very much time. Hopefully has been interesting for you, and if we have time, I will be happy to try to answer some question, and if not, please just put in contact with me, and I will really happy to write to you or to have a video conference whenever you want. Thank you very much.
Very much. I think it's a great experience that you share to us, and thank you for these many details. But one of the things, if I don't see necessarily the first raised hand from any of participants, so it's a kind of not to raise a hand visually like me is doing now, but to do it virtually. In the list of participants, you go in and then you raise your hand, we see it, and and then you have to switch on your mic and probably camera as well, so to put the question to speaker. But I have immediate question: how you deal with these private land owners? I saw that you are like focused more of a state or municipality owned properties, and there you can do all the plannings, all the niceties of the lengthy project you are doing. But what about local population? Sometimes they are also, you know, big landowners, I think, so they might be willing or not willing to take part, to take your advice. Or how about this interaction of the things you are doing and proposing?
No, all that plans are part of our system of land planning. So we have regional plans, and then we have local plans. This is for all the land, public and private land. So that planning affects all. And during the participation processes, private owners in Catalonia, around almost 80% of land is private owners. So most of the land is private owned, and we have to say that so all this information is only for what we call non-urban land. So land where there's no expectation of buildings or new settlement or new housing, that this is really difficult to. But in the case of regional planning, well, one of the things that we did was, let's say, to classify what land could be really of interest for new housing, because they were close to already existing towns or had no very good of high natural values, and what land should be preserved for housing for the next 25 years at least, let's say. But at local level, that plans affect both private and public lands, and during participatory processes, we agree in some cases some compensations if this means that, I don't know, agriculture or forest management has some additional regulations because we want to preserve or that. We through specific plans, very detailed for one single property, let's say, then as some of the examples I show you of forest management, of recovering of crops, or of areas for grazing, all that, this is in agreement with the private owner. So do you want to recover some grazing or crops or that, or you want to start with forest management for improving natural value? So we sign an agreement, a kind of a stewardship contract, let's say, and but this management is just with concrete agreement of with private owners. But planning is for all the land with participation. I just mentioned, but we work very much with farmers' trade unions. It's a very important trade union in our country. So the farmers were the ones who at the end helped us with the map of value for agricultural land. So when we were to a place saying we're interested in recovering land in this very important area for agriculture, they agreed because they were the ones who had helped us to draw that map. I don't know, it's clear enough, hopefully, yes.
If something is not clear, you can also put your questions in a chat room, so don't hesitate to do it if you want. We just want to see raised hands or chat questions. If not, then I still have, I'm sorry, I'm a journalist who usually does kind of politicians in my studios, and I have the question of this links of your proposed activities and the real management on this place, but then there is a political, and there is always a swing. At least for last decades in Spain, I saw so many changes of socialists and then conservatives and things like that. So how this 4 years period of politician in place in the municipality, the upper level or somewhere, influences your everyday big spatial planning and the things you do much longer looking into a bright future and today's needs than politicians do?
Yeah, really very good questions. I think that I think that the main idea is what's important of this project is what I try to say everywhere I go to explain is not to have 200 maps. So if you just have 2 maps because you have no more information or more resources, please use these 2 maps. It's better to have 2 maps than any, none. And with that, you have an image of what are your objectives, what area are more important. If you have this in mind, at least you know where you want to go. Yeah, we say that if in our country we say if you do not know where do you want to go, and no wind will be good for you, because as we are along the coast, we are sailors, and in this case we know where we want to go, and we take advantage at that time of the municipalities with political governments that are more for that. So it's in a 4 years period, some municipalities will be more for protection or for management, for green infrastructure or whatever you want. So we have this support to municipalities, is for free and is voluntary. And these 4 years, we have these 20 municipalities with local governments. We are for that. And the next period, we'll have other 20. And at the end, we will have all the pieces of the puzzle, and we will draw that image that we want to reach. And we have very nice examples that in 20 years ago, we tried to have new protected areas in areas of real interest, but it was impossible to have the agreement with 10 municipalities. But we knew that we wanted that project. And during these 20 years, working with this municipality now, this other next 4 years, this other, now we have this protection because we have piece by piece. So I think that if you know where you want to go, then you can take the opportunity of the political momentum, let's say, in each municipality or in the region of Catalonia. So the regional plan would not be possible to be approved right now. Was possible to approve 10 years ago, and with it. I think that is the main point for me.
Good. Well, the only small detail is probably here that you have to stay in your place for all your life. Politicians may change, and you may play this puzzle game with these and other municipalities, but you have to know what you want and stay and keep doing. Well, anyway, do you colleagues, do you have any questions in the chat room, or raise your hand and then we can connect you in the system and you can put your private question with the camera and microphone. on, so don't hesitate. Nevertheless, can I remind you also that we actually registered your emails, so even though you are not always the immediate partner in the project, now you are a good friend involved, hopefully, and you will receive probably in your emails questions. The interactions are very much welcome also during the next few years ahead. So when the outcome of the project will be, it will be officially, of course, shared also to you, but also please make these nice networks today profit from each another and raise the question, even if it's private in email, to one direct of the speakers. So I don't see any immediate questions anyway. We are here in a system, all of us, we can do it later on as well, or with the private emails. So then I don't hesitate and proceed to the next speaker. And here in Riga studio, we call it the studio, it's a television in the city center where we are actually placed. But the idea is Armand Auziņš actually came from Riga Technical University across the river, came to our studio with his really very dedication actually to what he's been doing, and now will propose to us as his good example. So the second thing which we will now focus is thematical training of the value-led approach and instruments, of course, for land use management. And here you are, Armand. Welcome to the program, and welcome. We want to hear your presentation and then probably exchange views in this conversation later. So please, Armand.
Thank you. Dear participants of the workshop, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me for this specific session. It's thematical training, a bit different from the previous one and the next, what you will see and hear today. So it's about values-led planning approach, actually, and it's about how values, different values, territorial ones, are created, how they are identified, assessed, and actually increase of these values, how that is captured by someone. And the best way how to present this is by showing some instruments that are used in land use management. Actually, my research and also academic interests are related to land use management field. I would like to propose you the next slide. Cannot
just push it.
I did it.
Ah, okay. Should I help you with and then no. Oh, like this, yes.
So, okay.
Is it the right one?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
This is the content of presentation. First of all, I will introduce you with the values-led planning approach, which is my postdoctoral research. I will share the information about some quite interesting outcomes of the project. And actually, some instruments are related to some presentations which will come up today, a bit later. Specific project on values on land value capturing. It's a cost project. As you know, the cost projects or actions of European Union, that is, these projects are related to networking more. But anyway, some good papers can come up from the research of mutual interest of about value, as I promised you before, and a bit about sustainable future. If we are, since we a lot are talking about the sustainability aspects, actually some new sustainable development paradigm is quite topical, especially at least.
So something goes, let's see, you know what?
Perhaps it would be better to do this automatically or by someone else, or in case.
You see, actually it's a this, not this one. So push this button and then it goes.
Then I have to, okay.
Yes.
Okay, about values-led planning approaches. But before that, I would like to stress more on this postdoctoral research. It's 3 years fundamental research project. And the title you can see, a values-led planning approach for sustainable land use and development. As I told, yes, this is a fundamental research project, a bit different option from the industrial-based project. And beneficial website is on your screens, and more information, some papers, as the papers are main outcome of the project. You can, the easiest way to find them, you can see at the research gate. Sorry.
Do you remember which one is yours? Can't see. I can also do it for you if you want. I can definitely just say next slide, and I will do it for you.
No, I will try, but I think the bullet must be somewhere on.
Yeah,
on you know,
like
this is the bullet is a bit.
Yeah,
so I have to
shaky.
shake this table.
Listen, just tell me when I have to push the
Okay.
next slide. I'll do it.
Take it easy. So here are several scholars. They represented their interests in regarding values, values-led approaches, different. All of them, they are related somehow to the decision making. And the main thing is that if you argue for something in discussions, then the values are crucial for that. So every argument, more or less, is based on values, different kind of values. That's, yeah.
Should I push it?
Yes, thanks.
So
I can try again,
try, yeah.
in case.
This?
Yeah. This approach focuses on improved practices. These practices are in land use and spatial development. So the beginning is improvement of planning practice, and then it's realization. So yes, I managed. So because I can move in a bit different way, the tool. Here is some quite sharp statement of what does it mean, this values-led planning approach. So I will then read it because it's quite sharp, as I told. Values-led planning approach based on consolidated new knowledge from stakeholders' experience and empirical evidence will help better understand and guide the relevant processes and their effects in specific territories. Based on identified values, these values normally are identified by the experts, and the attitudes or stakeholders' preferences. So it's some kind of merging together the identified values and attitudes or preferences of stakeholders. Stakeholders are those who are, for example, the community members at the specific place, also planners, decision makers as well, since the discussions are, for example, related to specific area. And what is most important, values have a fundamental role in any argumentation, and those are changing. We have to understand that at the very beginning, along with the changes in land use, intensity of land use, development issues, or like this. One of the statements or hypotheses developed here is that the creation of positive synergy causes primary necessity for the modern society, what we have today. There are, in reality, in practice, different challenges, big challenges. Urban expansion, or let's use the term urban sprawl. Also multifunctionality of different land uses in some territory. Internalization of negative externalities and challenges of the city agglomeration, since the cities have some bigger area of functional influence. main outcome of the project is represented by analytical research, then empirical research. The most important part of it is comprehensive evidence gathering in 7 case study areas, 7 countries. And then this all together is the reason to develop the methodology and implement it in the practice. So it's during 3 years. The project is going to finish October month this year. The comprehensive evidence gathering due to empirical research was organized due to the framework. This framework involves 3 parts. The first one is related to institutional performance and involvement in the planning, how the process is organized. The second one, the process itself, formal, informal planning, different instruments or tools. And planning environment, how values are shared, what is actually how the trust is built during the planning process, and how do the participants, stakeholders feel during the planning. And one of the key outcome of the project up till now, it's assessment of dynamic changes in territorial governance models, since they are different in different countries. And we looked at the period of time during over last 30 years. In Latvian case, it doesn't make sense to look before 1990. But anyway, this is the time framework where we looked at the changes. The next was planning implementation linkage. How do the different instruments support each other, formal and informal planning? And the third one, planning modes and styles, how it's combined in the planning practice, supply and demand-led planning. So methodology actually will be focused on usable techniques and recommendations, how to introduce this approach. And here you can see also essential parts or content of the methodology, but that will come out till the end of this year as the project will finish here. The most important is here the measures for the implementation of the methodological solutions and recommendations to use some innovative tools. Actually, today, during the other presentations, some of these tools will be quite vividly presented. Very shortly about methodological solutions and their benefits. So improved and more supportive and collaborative territorial governance. That's the outcome of the introduction of the approach. And choose spatial planning implementation relationship. Actually, that is more to use some flexible approaches, some not so strict formal planning as it's and the project-based approach, project-oriented approach is quite welcome actually, and also from the empirical research in different countries I saw very good examples of this, especially for example in Munich, Bavarian area, not so far from a big city called Munich. And also balanced planning interests. So people should feel more trust to those who are key decision makers, and actually to be a part of a decision-making process. As decision-making, it's not only raising the hands and vote for something, but decision-making involves 3 aspects. One is development of the decision, then taking decision, and implementation of decision. Some recognized instruments based on this approach. First, landscape planning and recommendations of methodological solutions, how to integrate natural protection plan with the formal comprehensive plan. Then the next will be presented by Elina about Life Plus. Also, there will be some instruments demonstrated for you today. Not only in rural areas, also in urban, in the Riga city, there was some kind of quite interesting study about assessment of urban residential quality. Not so far from here, from now, 2014 actually. Vivagras and the next one, Engrave, also they are about the applications of ecosystem service approach for different areas and very, very interesting instruments. All these are classified, let's say, under the instruments of values-led planning. The next one, more closer to the capturing value as value increases. Different territories do it to different aspects. Yes, sometimes we use the terminology land value capture, but also public value capture is used, and I will explain a bit why, and this is the context actually of this cost action. The title of the project, it's public value capture for increasing property values. Also two websites, official ones. First, we proposed 7 countries this project. Now we are 37 countries for this project involved, and almost 100 participants already signed for in different roles for this project. So this is quite topical today. And so the main objective or aim of this project is to develop common framework for value capturing and the provision of innovative tools for public value capture based on comparative analysis of these 37 countries. And the reason is why that to optimize the allocation of development costs and benefits, this is today's topic actually, as well as to discover the public budget, more or less. Mostly this is related to local budgets, to the local municipality budgets. Yes, as I told, the cost actions are related to networking. That is the main, but during the networking, also good proposals for other projects could be made. And also some papers, as the communication in scientific world is do it papers. It's what we do. So first of all, since those 37 countries are quite different, we have to understand the philosophical background of properties actually. So real property is different. For example, in common law countries in England, that's very totally different from the continental Europe, which is the rest, Latvia as well in this among these countries. Also, we need to develop common terminology in spite of differences, as I told, understanding of this property, and we have to classify value capture instruments. Actually, through the instruments, you can understand better these differences and the commonalities of the different practice, what is going on in practice. So, as I told, that comparative studies, that could be the framework is developed for the classification, and now we are in the phase to work for it. So, very shortly, the definition, the simplest for you today: public value capture, land value increase captured by public authority. Normally, that is local municipality. And it's about how to finance public costs or refinance if there are some kind of improvements in an environmental oriented, so some parks or longer streets, better conditions to use the environment, or playgrounds, this is more related to the values which are. But to finance that, the increase in the property values of private persons could be used for some kind for these. So yeah, but we have to understand and keep it in mind all the time due to the project that significant differences among countries and the systems exist, even ideologies. So it's challenging, but it's doable. Here are two scholars which provide one, the routes for increasing values, another one, value steps of land development. Please consider this in the context of today's workshop, that this is due to land use intensity increase due to specific issues. Current land use, intensify land use, then we perhaps want to change something, so planning in there, then public infrastructure established, private investments, and then we can enjoy social economic development during some period of time. So yeah, sometimes that is necessary, sometimes it is not. In the case of urban sprawl, for example, that is at the end will be some kind of negative aspects from the urban sprawl. But actually, when even if we protect environment, we care about biodiversity. Anyway, we are facing the influence of people to the territory, and it means that there is always some kind of qualitative changes in land use. If you look at specific this step, then we identify value before, value after introduction, some costs or investments, and then we can see the profit. Actually, this is some kind of surplus value that could be more sharp designation of this, but both of them, they are economic categories. Actually, I put here profit because due to the value capture can be a loss, so negative value, let's say. And what is the most important from this picture is to understand that what we are going to capture due to increase in value, is this profit, only profit, not the part of the investment or cost. Again, some recognized instruments here. There are different classifications due to the project. We understood that, but one of the most understandable, it's provided by Alterman, 2012. Macro, direct, divided into two, and indirect instruments. But I would say that, and also colleagues of mine says that this is theoretically very clear and understandable, but not so easy to introduce or apply in practice. But anyway, that's good that you, at the very beginning, you can frame your vision, what you are going to do. So we realized Baltic case of value capturing of 3 countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. The same framework was used also to research 3 other countries or instruments in 3 other countries. There are big ones in the Europe: France, Germany, and Sweden. And the results are quite interesting, but we will also see during the project how these instruments are recognized in different countries. As I told, 37 signed for the project for now. So micro value capture instruments are not recognized. The first one of direct also, we do not introduce planning fees, neither development fees in our practices, but we have to acknowledge that a lot of costs during the development or land use change covers the developer. So there are some capital gain tax, for example, as a direct instrument. That's also questionable. Is that the instrument which helps local municipalities or not? Because It's collected by the central government budget in Latvia and also two other Baltic countries. And what we use often, or let's say better, always when it's detailed planning case, so there is always development agreements on implementation of detailed plan in all three countries. These agreements are between a local municipality and a developer or real property owner. And what we know, all of us, that real property tax, that is instrument, that is indirect instrument used in all countries, and we are talking about this instrument a lot from different angles. Yes, in Latvia we have real property tax, so also buildings are taxed, but in Estonia and Lithuania only land is taxed. An example here, to understand better the correlation between changes in land use and intensity, between changes in land use intensity and land values, I'm sorry. So how the value is created. So a bit different from the picture when I showed you when you saw these value steps. But here also, this example is about to better understand that not only we have to see the benefits in the value increase in the result of investment in land, but also we have to see the benefits as a result of land change others, a part of this capital gain, let's say. So and this another one, it's related to larger area than only interest of specific developer or real property owner. These are benefits which are related to social economic development of the community. This is some kind of synergy effect to what is going on in some kind of period of time next after the specific development. Last but not least today, about sustainable future. Actually, land development, it's about qualitative and time-consuming changes in land use, as you understood from previous what I told today. And this is a part of land governance system, institutional system. And here also one of the, I like simple. It's land-related rights, not always property rights, but others which can be related to the specific place. One of the most understandable definitions about sustainability in land management, it's sustainable intensification proposed by Peterson and SNAP 2015. How to manage the growing pressure of human needs while at the same time minimizing the impact of the environment. Good question. But moreover, we have sustainable development goals, and there is some kind of transformation of our world. But my focus here, talking about sustainable future, is that perhaps we have to see not only on these goals as like those 17 declared, and there are some kind of sub-objectives of each of them, but we should perhaps are certain relevant contradiction between those. You cannot say, for example, that one of the goals says that halt biodiversity loss without considering that there is another goal which says that zero hunger or still economic growth or cities. So perhaps we have to see some contradiction between those. And then the definition perhaps could be different. So the development, we should perhaps talk about development that we can afford, actually. How significantly human needs have to be diminished or changed for the impact of the environment and related resources to be small as possible. And all this actually value-led planning approach and cost project outcomes, they are related to decision making. So my vision here is for you that decision making needs to be baked with facts, data, and analysis. So measuring and evaluating before key decision making. And then perhaps we should also understand that if you do not measure, you cannot manage. Thank you.
Good, here we are. It looks very interesting when you go into the depths, but then for me, I took one the synergy of these profit makers around. So would it be a wider society, let's call it environmental organizations or something. So now, can you explain from the scientific point of view how really to balance these things? Sometimes when, you know, there is a special, let's call it the nest of dark stork, black stork. You know the story in Latvia. If you find it, so it means the whole area is totally closed, and developers, the real estate owners or someone might even argue that this is not really the thing we should now do. We should never, you know, even try to make great management plans or something, because this kind of stops the business forever. Now, there is this social need, environmental protection, but then there are, of course, the needs for development of a society. So how should, or can you actually, as a scientist, really suggest decision makers the great balancing formula in between those are, let's say, NGOs from the environmental protection, let's say, family, and the ones who still have their own, even the business needs, not only, you know, needs for whatever political decisions or something. If there is a great formula on the basis of what you've been measuring and proposing here.
Thank you for a very good question.
Thank you.
Yes, the synergy we have to look at, it's actually could be explained if we have a meeting, for example, about some crucial for the local community, some issues. So then we have two ends during the discussion. A total chaos, yes, or total disagreement. It means that conflict, total conflict, and consensus in decision making. So everyone who participates agrees. So what we can do, yes, what we have to do from scientific point of view, is look at different concepts in between. How organize local society, the people, during the discussions, that their opinion, as much as possible, is absorbed by the final decision. Okay. So one is the discussions. We can talk from very early morning till the end of the day, and zero result, but we can achieve something. We can agree. So values-led planning, that's about this. All arguments, if you want to argue for something, for your interest, you have to show up.
You, of course, so in the real life that the values of the two different people might be so different that these are two languages, and if you don't know the other counterpart's language or the value system, then there are like two lists of values you propose, but can you like really make a synergy of these value lists? Like, do you need a mediation, like a specific process, or now if there is a scientific, let's say, approach or at least formula how to merge?
Actually, it's practice. Every day is practice. It's actually it's about deliberative planning. Yeah, one of the a bit narrower concept than participatory planning. So the key role here, of course, is those who are learned, who can teach others, can organize discussions, can identify these interests, values and interests, and combine them. That is actually about the. This is the real time to prove that the people are really professional.
Yes.
Not only just talking around.
Yeah, exactly. Being professional is exactly the thing here. And Silvia Ronchi, I hope she has nothing private, but she wants to be professional on the basis of what you've been saying. Can you share us your presentation in the Progress project? Because Silvia wants your presentation. She's saying us in chat room. So can you like say promise to Silvia?
You will get it.
Okay, great. Good for you, Silvia. So anyway, if Silvia or any of participants wants to raise a private question, then in email. If now, then please turn on your cameras, raise your virtual hand, and turn on your microphone. And so I don't see anyone in the list, not yet, because okay. Well, anyway, they can approach you during the today in emails as well, and later. So I'm just encouraging you to. No, I don't see anyone in the system as a raised hand. So very much, thank you very much. So really, Armand, you gave us the nice formula and the scientific approach for this. Now we will change the mics and speakers also. While you do it, thank you. While you do it, I will just remind you. It seems like we will be a little bit earlier than sought in the program. So it means that we will go a little bit earlier in a lunch break and then restart the session again. Just a small warning that the second part of the session will probably not be as it is mentioned previously in the program, but a bit earlier. But we will see how it will turn out. Now, the second thing is, of course, all the presentations which will be given actually will be shared also by the project, but also you may find interest to come into project, then please approach the project managers. And if you are like a partner that is not involved from an initial phase, you could be still a very good friend and valuable scientist, for example, or practitioner, or all these niceties of the project. Maybe it's not the highest possible rocket science, but I think the great thing which we'll give is these nice examples of realized projects, the outcomes, the learnings we made. And actually one of the nice learnings was also made by Elina Konstantinova. She's working for Baltic Coast, which is a great association, the good NGO partner for National Protection, Environmental Protection Agency, the national body here in Latvia, and they realized together a great project, which I think is a great value of at least our Latvian society. I very much admire always these projects, what they do. These guys are really practical and green, not theoretical only. So Elina will now share the experience she learned, the good practice example from Latvia to you guys. Please, Elina.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues. And as Ansis said, my name is Elina Konstantinova, and I'm representing NGO Baltic Coast. And we are representing a life-financed project, Life Ecosystem Services, and our organization were responsible for methodological framework and also development of recommendations. And today I would like to present our project methodology and results, focusing on integration of ecosystem services approach into spatial planning and decision making. And now I can share my presentation.
So it works.
Yeah. And as you can see, the main aim of our project was to promote application of ecosystems and their services assessment in spatial and nature conservation planning in Latvia, as well as also to create public awareness and information regarding ecosystem service. And we were three main beneficiaries: Nature Conservation Agency, Association Baltic Coast, and Saukrasti Municipality. And the project last almost 6 years, and you can see here main activities in duration of time, starting from mapping and assessment of ecosystem services, creation of management scenarios, piloting optimal management scenario, and development of recommendations and toolkit. And I will tell you about each of these steps in more detail further. And the project had two pilot areas that both are coastal zones. And the coastal zones were chosen mainly because of their biological value on national and European level, as well as significance for the whole coastline from economic, cultural, and also aesthetic point of view, which is very, very important areas in Latvia. And as you know already all, that the strategical importance of ecosystem services sets the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment and also EU Biodiversity Strategy. And the strategy determines that each member state must map and assess the state of ecosystems and their services in their national territory by 2014, and also assess the economic value of such services and promote the integration of these values in accounting and reporting systems by 2020. And part of EU countries already have completed their national ecosystem assessments. But of course, many countries already missed this deadline. But anyway, the requirement to do so still exists. And it's a reason to consider that these assessments and their integration into national and regional policy will be one of the priorities of European Commission in future. And as you can see, also Latvian National Development Plan outlines the need for evaluation and accounting of natural capital. So this topic is actually very topical or current now. And from our point of view, there is close correlation between ecosystem services approach and sustainable development planning. And there is more and more important far-sighted planning and decision. And this approach can be a tool or way how to plan and make decisions in order to meet today's need without compromising the needs of future generations. So we see it can be this approach integrated into strategical national planning and also in local and regional planning documents. We see that the ecosystem service approach has several advantages in land use and decision making. And first, it is integrated approach and involve environmental, social and economic dimensions. And secondly, it's performed as place-based approach with appropriate place-based indicators, stakeholder involvement and appropriate management options. And it serves basis for more far-sighted decisions and management options. And as you know, planning is often affected by conflict sectoral interests, and this approach allows to assess all these interests and highlight benefits and trade-offs for each of the side. And here you can see more benefits. It's also facilitate communication among different stakeholders, among decision makers from different sectors like landscape and urban planning, agriculture and water management. It also gives opportunity to calculate the returns on investments in environmental nature conservation, and it also opens new opportunities for new markets, for example, water reuse, cost-saving technologies, zero-waste shops and reputation in media. So it's very good, in our point of view, very good method from the many sides. Within our project, we developed a conceptual 8-step framework for integrating ecosystem services assessment into spatial planning and decision-making processes. And this framework could be implemented by different national, regional and local institutions at different levels. And further, I will tell about each step in more detail on basis of our case study in Saukrasti pilot area. And the first step is to identify the current situation in our pilot area. and that means defining of ecosystems and actual land cover in our research area and assess quality of these ecosystems. And for ecosystem mapping, we used this Korean land cover data sets. And then we were provided also habitat quality assessment according to national methodology, and from low to high. And on the right side, you can see this ecosystem map, where also these quality indicators are shown. And the second step, the most complicated step, is identify and assess of ecosystem services in our ecosystems. And for classifying ecosystem services, we use common international classification of ecosystem services, and we use the matrix or so-called spreadsheet method developed by scientist Benjamin Burchard. And we involve different experts of different fields, which are worked on more than 20 indicators. And each ecosystem service is described by one or more environmental or social indicator or index. The 5-point scale was designed based on Latvian conditions in ecosystems, and we see that also these indicators or indicator sheets can be replicated also in other areas, coastal areas, not only in Latvia, but for example in other Baltic states. So it's a very valuable input from project side. Here you can see the ecosystem services matrix and also maps, and you can see that for each ecosystem service in each geospatial unit or ecosystem is provided indicator or evaluation from 0 to 5 based on detailed indicator sheet or description. In our project, we introduce and perform also this economic evaluation of ecosystem services. And it's important to mention that this monetary value is used as a common metric unit to compare different ecosystem services in different ecosystems. It's not value or price we can buy the ecosystem service in market. It's only comparing metric unit. And this economic evaluation was implemented in 6 months, and it was mostly based on this first biophysical assessment of ecosystem services, also on primary data. We have survey results, and of course existing studies and information sources. And as you can see, the most valuable in our case were regulation services, taking into account that the area plays significant role in erosion protection and biodiversity, and it is near the urban territory. The 3 main methods were used in economic evaluation. It's benefit transfer method, which estimate economic values for ecosystem services by transferring available information from studies already completed in another location or context. Then market price method, which values ecosystem services that are possible to buy or sell in commercial market. And it's based on quantity people purchase at different prices and the quantity supplied at different prices. And travel cost method, which based on primary data on data obtained by questionnaires, where the time and travel cost expenses that people spend to reach the site are evaluated. And this ecosystem valuation was quite complicated. But I can shortly show one example on application of market price method for provisional service, wildberry harvest On the left side, you can see some assumptions considered, but mainly calculation is based on potential of wild berry yield in kilos and estimated wild berry price euros per kilo. In economic valuation, we used the existing researches and evaluations already performed and adapted to our situation, and we can suggest for assessments already implemented, especially economical assessments. There is very good data sources, economics of ecosystem and biodiversity database. We used it for benefit transfer method in our economic valuation. The next step is assessment of current management and alternative options. What do we want to improve or change, and then assess how changes the values of ecosystem service under different management options and scenarios. And we developed 3 scenarios for both pilot areas, which is basic scenario or zero scenario of current situation, development by improving environmental education and recreation opportunities. In Saukrasti pilot area, it was establishment of nature design park by June. And the third scenario, we call it uncontrolled development, which is development by increasing building territories. And for each scenario, biophysical assessment and also economical evaluation was implemented. The 5th step, it's stakeholder involvement, and we have very active and wide stakeholder involvement during all project implementation, also in assessment phase of ecosystem services, discussing scenarios and also ways how to integrate it into planning. And we used almost all forms and levels for stakeholder involvement, starting from providing information and to participation and cooperation. And you can see that there were about 42 different events with more than 1,500 participants, public consultation meetings, seminars within development of municipal development program, and also nature conservation plan and public joint events for restoration of habitats. So very wide involvement of stakeholders in this process. The next step, we saw it from our project experience that as this ecosystem service concept is quite new, especially in Latvia, that there must be some support system or help to introduce it in planning and decision making. And for that reason, we elaborated recommendations for specialists involved in spatial planning processes. And recommendations are available as printed and online brochure, but also as practical toolkit. I will show it and tell you in more details in next slides. And yeah, the 7th slide. All previously described steps results in decision making to maintain ecosystems and their services by managing the system sustainable. And in our case, the results of ecosystem services assessment were used for update of planning documents. And we updated the Saukrasti Municipality Development Program for 2014-2020, but we have promised and we see that results will be used for the following planning period as well. And we also integrate recommendations for nature management plan for Nature 2000 site, Nature Park Piejūra. And document is already updated with our project recommendations. There were also recommendations for other pilot area, which is Jaunķemeri, for Ķemeri Nature Conservation Plan, and it will be developed till 2023. And we hope that our recommendations will be taken into account. And the last step is implementation phase. where we actually making these changes and making monitoring of these changes, how it actually impact ecosystem services. And we implement these practical measures for restoration of embryonic dunes and implementing smart visitor flow. And it is this nature design park in Saukrasti area, wide dune, when we try to diminish this anthropogenical load from one side, and at the same time to increase also these cultural services, recreation possibilities, and tourism and environmental education possibilities. And we still continue to monitor project results and the impact of implemented actions, and till now the results are very good. In common, our ecosystem service assessment highlight also some priorities of ecosystem services in common in coastal areas. And we can see that this provision services, for example, as collecting of wild berries, mushrooms, medical plants, is added value each time when we are visiting this place and using this cultural services. And the cultural services is advantage for economic development in coastline, and regulating and maintenance services, which mainly are provided by forests and dunes, are basis for public safety, especially near the urban areas as Saukrasti and Jaunķemeri, and it is possibility also to increase these cultural services basing on this evaluation. We see that following things can be transferred and replicated from our project to other projects, areas, sectors. It's our methodology of assessment and mapping of ecosystem services. Also, indicators already developed can be transferred and replicated to other areas and projects. And of course, our tools on toolkit on economical evaluation and spatial planning modeling tools can be replicated to other areas and projects. There are diverse range of publications created in the framework of projects. And we see also this nature design park case also can be replicated in the ways that there is possible to increase tourism, recreation, and at the same time improve quality of habitats and ecosystem. As I said before, we developed recommendations for national, regional, and local level, and it's available on our website. And there is common principles for all levels, but different approaches and levels of details. And for local level, we develop more detailed recommendations, or we can say the toolkit, which involve 3 models. And I will shortly say about each model. The first is management strategy model, shows predictable changes in the supply and quality of the ecosystem services depending on chosen type of the territory management scenario. And this tool allows to assess the different site management scenarios we already offer. One scenario is mainly based on economic development, economical benefits. Second, mainly on nature conservation or environmental protection. And the third is like a balance or sustainable development, striving for balance. And the second toolkit is territory planning and modeling model, which shows predictable changes in the value of ecosystem service by changing the areal proportions. User have possibility to include their territory, hectares or areas, and also possibility to change the quality values of ecosystem service assessment. And then there is provided output data when we can see how our ecosystem service assessment changes when we change land cover type, or we change quality of ecosystem service provided. For coastal areas, the toolkit also involves economical assessment model. And this tool is developed based on the same principles I mentioned in planning tool. The user have possibility to change the value of area, of ecosystem area, and also quality indicator. And of course, there is possibility to add also own ecosystem service indicators and also add geospatial units or ecosystems in this model. So that's shortly all from me, and thank you, but you can find the more detailed information on all researches and all models in our project websites. And thank you.
This is one of the great things of the European Union, that some projects actually already have their conclusions, like you in your project, and then you can share it to people who are actually taking new approaches and new dimensions here. Now, looking into this, I don't know, maybe in different places in Europe they are more aggressive, but I think especially since you've been talking about the coastal area planning, that always looks like a gem of a nature, you know, this great, and we have here sandy beaches and all the niceties. And then comes, you know, this very kind of simple approach to plan in a great forward and to explain it to local people. Do you think you have to more involve like new scientists, like psychologists or someone, not only the planners, the ones who can set the value, the things like this, but actually more and more important it is how you explain the values to the people, to the greater public. Maybe you have your own kind of ideas of what you've been realizing, and now I see even this project is from the point of view of, you know, the great science, but then when it comes to communication, maybe there should be a press officer in every aspect who really knows how to deal with the communication techniques.
Yeah, I can agree to you, because especially when we speak about the coastline, and we see that there are so many indirect values or indirect benefits, which can aesthetic value or symbolic value, and we can't express it in economical. We can try, we did it, but it's always hard to express it in economic value. And yeah, I think it's more, we need more talk about it and communicate that it's very important that when we choose not so sustainable scenario, we lost not only money or investment in regulating service afterwards, but also such symbolic aesthetic values and values for rest, for recreation in forest, in dunes. And it's also important to communicate to people, because everybody maybe on the other hand, people want to live near, how close to coastline to sea as possible. But on the other hand, they must understand that there are erosion processes and so many regulating ecosystem service or aspects which can be affected by this.
And Elina, you have to promise now, since you can show it in a place, when you guys will come to Latvia during this project for a study visit, then we go and see with Elina the Salkrasti area and all the areas which will be at that point even maybe called differently, because we have regional reform here in Latvia, so we see. But this is definitely the big thing here in Baltic countries. Actually, the Rail Baltica project very much involves also these values you've been talking about, because people are reluctant, and up there in north in Estonia there was even a case of after the final agreement of the line where Rail Baltica, the new Euro project, should go, it will be actually negotiated once again, exactly because the revaluation process of a natural habitat, and not to poison, not to disturb certain species. It will be decided, it will cost a lot of millions probably. Decision was not kind of very let's say normal before, and there were people opposing. I don't see any raised hands, any chat questions or something. It looks like everyone wants to come back, go for a lunch and then come back. So I propose then that if we now leave for a lunch, and it's 1:15 in Riga, so hopefully it's a little bit earlier in your time, then we come back in 1 hour, yeah? So 2:15 Latvian time, Brussels time, it's what, 12:15 now. So you come back at 1:15, and Irish time is a 2-hour difference with us here up in the north and east in Latvia. So actually you can even leave this channel. We will be running music or something so that you know that you are in system. When you come back, we start. Okay, bon appétit. Thank you. Okay, hello dear friends, here we are back. Hopefully you are also having great lunch. Nevertheless, sorry for Irish guys, you probably hadn't had lunch because it was kind of too early. Well, yes, this is also the beauty of Europe. It's not one of the smallest continents, it's a big continent because it has at least 3 time zones, which makes our life even more complicated. Nevertheless, those who just came for the second part of the session, we organize our looking into nice stories or actually good examples of best practice country by country, and we will actually travel exactly to Ireland now, and hopefully also if you have a question or you want to raise a question by writing, you can use chat room, or if you have your private question, then you raise your hand, which is like a button to click, and then also be aware that it's you who has to switch on the microphone and probably also the video camera so we can see you. Una is already here. She is working for All Ireland Pollinator Plan, which is actually great and big framework, the experience which is actually based on a country, not the region. So I think you have a very special story. I guess many questions could follow, but we start with your presentation, Una. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me today. Just going to share my screen with you. So, thank you again for inviting me to give this presentation. I want to talk to you today about the All Ireland Pollinator Plan, some of the successes we've had and some of the lessons that we've learned so far. So I work in the National Biodiversity Data Centre in Ireland, so we manage information on Ireland's biodiversity, where it occurs and how it's changing. And in Ireland, we've got 31,500 different species living in 117 different habitats. Unfortunately, of those habitats, only 9% are in a good state. And of the species that we've assessed, 17% are threatened with extinction from Ireland. So like many other countries around the world, biodiversity loss is a huge problem. And if we want to protect biodiversity and all the ecosystem services that it provides, that's a huge challenge. Firstly, because biodiversity itself is very complex, it can be very hard to relate to it in the busy modern world and very hard to clearly communicate it as a message. The other thing is that we see these new normals all the time. So over the last 50 years, we've had huge increases in mechanization and intensification, urbanization. But hidden within that progress, there can be downfalls. It might be in the way that we treat people, it might be in the way that we manage our services, or it might be in the way that we manage our landscape. So often by the time you've realized, generations have grown up with that as a normal. So then you need to try and bring about whole societal change, which is quite difficult to do. So really, we've got biodiversity loss, that's a huge challenge. And what we need to do is to identify simple vehicles that can be used to sell that biodiversity message to a very wide audience. And thankfully, pollinators are perfect for this. So they're an element of biodiversity that people can understand and relate to. You can communicate about pollinators in a very clean and simple way. You can easily monitor changes. And protecting pollinators has knock-on benefits for biodiversity generally. So, we know in Ireland, pollinators are important for the farmers and the growers who grow pollinator-dependent crops. The numbers of crops that they're growing in Ireland and elsewhere is increasing all the time, but at the same time, we're seeing declines in the pollinators themselves. Pollinators are also important for health and well-being, and also they're very important in the landscape generally. So we know in Ireland, over 3/4 of our wild plants also benefit from being pollinated by insects. So without those pollinators there, the landscape looks very different. Pollinators, they pollinate our wild plants and they provide fruits and seeds for birds and mammals. So really in protecting pollinators, you are protecting the environment generally. Unfortunately, the plight of pollinators in Ireland is typical of many components for biodiversity. So we have 99 different bee species, the honeybee, 21 different types of bumblebees and 77 different types of solitary bees. And of these wild pollinators, 1/3 are threatened with extinction from the island of Ireland, unfortunately. And you might say, well, that's terrible, rare species are under threat, but probably the common species are still okay and they can still fulfill pollination service. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So we know that of our common bumblebee species, the abundance of those common bumblebee species has declined by 14% in Ireland just since 2012. So not only are our rare species in trouble, our common species are also in difficulties. So rare species are disappearing through the loss of semi-natural habitats, and those common species are disappearing because of the way that we manage the rest of the landscape. So we've got these 98 wild bees in Ireland, beautiful insects. I know that you probably have much wider diversity in some of the other countries around Europe, but we have 98 different types. But if we want to protect pollination service everywhere across the island, which is what we need to do, we need to manage the whole landscape in a way that provides those wild bees with the food, shelter and safety that they need to survive. And in doing that, it helps protect biodiversity generally, as well as all the other ecosystem services that biodiversity provides. So pollinators declining in Ireland as they are elsewhere for various different reasons. Mostly there's just not enough food in the landscape anymore, so it's hunger, not enough safe places to nest, inadvertent introduction of pests and diseases, levels of pesticide use, and then climate change interacts with everything and makes the whole thing more difficult for them. But in some ways, it's about the way that we manage the landscape. When I always think of those 4 pictures on the screen at the minute, if you imagine that you were a bee and you had to fly across that landscape, you can see how it would be really hard to survive because, it's very neat, it's very tidy, there's very little food in it. So we need to think about the way that we manage the landscape and what implications that's having for ecosystem services like pollination. So it's not about letting the landscape go wild, but it is about thinking about what they're doing, what we're doing, and trying to let nature back into our lives to some extent so that it can provide us with those services that we depend on. So in Ireland, we had pollinator decline. That's what we were tracking within the National Biodiversity Data Centre. At the same time, in universities, and particularly in Trinity College Dublin with Professor Jane Stout, they were researching why it was happening and what we could do about it. So at some point, you have to implement the research and take action. So I suppose that's what Jane and I wanted to do. We said, well, we really should come together and try to do something about this problem, but we wanted to wait for the time to be right. So we wanted to wait until there was enough evidence-based studies on how to help, both from Ireland and also from Europe or globally. We wanted there to be enough public perception of the problem and the importance of pollinators. And importantly, we wanted there to be a monitoring scheme in place so that we had baseline data. So the Bumblebee monitoring scheme was set up in 2012, which then provided some baseline data. So once we start the pollinator plan, you can see you have some way of determining whether or not you're having a positive impact over time. So I think if there's a problem, you know, regardless maybe of what it is, what do you do? And I think this is what you do. So you have to decide if it's important, critically assess that problem and how serious it is, identify what's causing it, collectively agree a positive framework to address the problem, identify evidence-based actions to help, communicate those properly, develop a partnership approach where you can, and then track progress. You know, is what you're doing actually working? So the first three is where we were in Ireland. We knew we had a problem, we knew what we could do about it. And then the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan was about moving to this stage. So collectively agreeing a positive framework to address the problem going forward. So it was developed by a steering group, involved a lot of consultation, both with the public and with stakeholders. 68 organisations agreed to support it when it was published in 2015, and it's identified 81 actions to make Ireland more pollinator friendly again. Just to say that it was a bottom-up approach, so it wasn't that the Irish government said, oh, you know, you must do a pollinator plan. It came from the other direction. It was developed without funding, and it is a voluntary plan. So really, the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan, it's about looking at our whole landscape and saying, you know, can we make farmland more pollinator friendly? Can we make public land more pollinator friendly? And can we make private land more pollinator friendly again? So most of the actions, 42 out of the 81, are focused on that. But then there are also various other objectives. There are actions around raising awareness. There are actions around managed pollinators, which is the honeybee. Actions around research to expand our knowledge. And then actions around collecting data to track change. Just to say a little bit about how we manage the whole process. So there is a steering group which oversees the implementation, and that implementation is coordinated by the National Biodiversity Data Centre where I work. And it is an all-Ireland plan. You might know that Ireland, there are two jurisdictions. We've got the Republic of Ireland and then Northern Ireland within the island itself. And so we've both come together to produce this All-Ireland Pollinator Plan. And that's been, you know, a really positive process in that both jurisdictions have worked together and shared knowledge, shared expertise to try and address this problem. Say a tiny bit about funding. So there is the steering group, there are 15 members on it. That's not funded. So they either participate as part of their existing job, or they do it voluntarily. Then I project manage the initiative, and I spend about 1.25 days a week within my existing role as a senior ecologist in the National Biodiversity Data Centre. And then we've got one project officer. And in 2020, that has been funded by SuperValue, who are an Irish supermarket chain, who are really focused on sustainability and local communities. So the project management and the websites are provided by the National Biodiversity Data Centre in Ireland, which is government funded. The Department of Agriculture have provided €15,000 each year to enable us to develop resources. There is no project budget beyond that. And all the partner organisations, so when we initially published, there were 68 partners and 81 actions, so the actions were spread out amongst the partners, and they agree to fund their own actions within the plan. This was just a little bit about the lessons that we've learned in terms of the way that the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan was set up and how it's managed. Some things that have worked. The bottom-up approach has been really positive because people buy into it because they want to. Public consultation has been really important. The non-threatening voluntary nature of the plan. Positive messaging. So we make sure that it's always positive, it's always solution-driven, you know, rather than trying to apportion any blame. Strong sense that it's a shared plan of action, you know, everyone's in it together. It has been beneficial that myself and Jean Stout and Trinity College Dublin do have a background in pollination ecology, so that it has made it easier. This active multi-sectoral steering group. It's also been beneficial that implementation of the plan is coordinated by the National Biodiversity Data Centre, because that's allowed us to directly link the actions into data and monitoring. Not that this is ever to be recommended, but you know, sometimes when you find yourself in a situation, and in our case, you know, the lack of funding has in some ways promoted efficiency. In terms of room for improvement, you know, I suppose the first phase is about bringing along humans in some ways. If bees were to give the plan a grade, you know, it might be different. I sometimes think that bee on the cover might say, you know, is this the best you can do? But, you know, it is about gradually trying to bring along humans and to improve things in a realistic and in a pragmatic way. The lack of resources that we have means that we can't fully capitalize on the momentum. So there's huge interest in pollinators in Ireland, huge desire to help. And again, it's been difficult to capitalize on that because it's not particularly well funded. Also, pollinators are currently very trendy. So there is a challenge there in trying to get changes that will have a real difference. And also, you know, there should be greater knowledge sharing at the European level, which was why I was so thrilled to be invited to give this talk today and get a chance to, you know, to start that process. So back to this approach. So once we had the plan, we then moved into this phase, which was identifying evidence-based actions to help and communicating those properly. We wanted the messaging to be positive, constructive, and celebrate the biodiversity that we do have in Ireland. You know, we are where we are. There's no point in dwelling on that. We wanted to try to look to the future and say, well, you know, how are we going to improve things from here? And a lot of it was about trying to get people to connect back into biodiversity, to care about it, because then those people are more inclined to help protect it. We wanted to be very clear in what it was we were asking people to do. So really the core message of the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan is about how you, your site, whether it's your garden, a school, a park, you know, a farm, a business property, whatever it happens to be, can you provide food, shelter, and safety for pollinators? And in doing that, of course, then you're protecting biodiversity generally. So we really wanted to try to communicate properly to all the different sectors that we were asking to help. And I think sometimes we tell people there's a problem and we say, you know, we really need to do something about this, but you have to tell people what it is you're asking them to do. So we wanted to produce these evidence-based guidelines to explain to all the different sectors exactly how they could help. So there was one for schools, one for farmland, one for councils, one for local communities, one for businesses, one for gardens, one for faith communities, one for transport corridors. And each time there's lots of different actions in each of those documents. They're all evidence-based. Each time we engage with the sector, so they feed into it to help develop realistic actions. And then we try to tailor the communication each time. Say each one has lots of actions, each explained, they're all pragmatic, you know, realistic. And you can see all these on the website at pollinators.ie. There's various other guideline documents to explain some of the more complicated actions. We also wanted the information to be really easily accessible, so free and using appropriate channels. So for us, the website is really important, so pollinators.ie. Again, we wanted that to be a one-stop shop where people could come along, find out exactly how to help. So essentially there's standalone toolkits, you know, for everyone who wants to play a role. So lots of information on the website, various videos and animations and little things like that. I also think when you're trying to manage an initiative like this, you have to manage it actively and it has to be open and transparent. So if you're asking everyone to get involved, they have to feel that they're part of something together. So no one wants to think they're the only person taking action. They want to know what everyone else is doing. So I think it's really important that the process is managed in that way. You know, so we do have monthly newsletters and use social media and blogs and regularly report on progress. So it really is about working together as much as possible. You know, it's not just one sector that's being asked to make changes to their land to help pollinators. You know, it's councils or local authorities, schools, gardens. It's everyone who's being asked to play a role so that together you can come together and create these networks of pollinator-friendly habitat. And if we can make our urban centres a bit more pollinator-friendly, and our transport corridors a bit more pollinator-friendly, and our farmland a bit more pollinator-friendly, well, suddenly the whole landscape opens up again. pollinators are able to survive and thrive and provide us with those ecosystem services that we're dependent on. So when we had these evidence-based guideline documents, we tried to use existing networks or partnerships to encourage the implementation and rollout. So for example, with schools, we worked with existing frameworks, so green schools or eco schools, and so on. Try to communicate in as many ways as possible. Just then to say a little bit about what we've learned from all that implementation and some of the things that I think has worked. Firstly, the tailored evidence-based actions that were developed in consultation, that's been really important. And we were put under a little bit of pressure at the start to just produce one set of actions. And there was an argument that people would be able to, pick this one document up and then they would decide themselves what was best for their sector, whether it was a council or a garden or a local community. But we felt really strongly that we didn't want to do that. So we wanted to tailor them so that you communicate them to the people that you're trying to target each time. And I think that means that it's easier for them to understand exactly what it is that you're asking them to do. And also it means, that they buy more into the initiative that you're trying to promote. We focused on positive actions, so those that are low cost and easily implementable. We continually encourage partnerships. We've allowed the initiative to evolve as opportunities have arisen. We try to really transparently track progress and we have a recognition system for those who help. We tried really hard to communicate a clean and simple message. So it's about food, shelter and safety for bees. And we've always focused on wild bees, even though there are other insect pollinators. But by focusing on bees, it's a simple message. And in taking action for bees, you're helping all other insects. Whereas if you were to focus on some of the other important pollinating groups, it's not quite such a clean and simple message anymore because they have much more complex life histories. We've made all the resources free and easily accessible. We rely on the 100+ partners now who have their own communication channels. We try to encourage champions within sectors. We deliberately try to reach new audiences. We use short videos to communicate to key sectors, and we try to use a peer-to-peer approach with those. They don't need me telling them what to do. A farmer needs another farmer telling him, what's the best approach. And we always try to communicate on an active message, so it's something that you can do, even if it's just to tell someone new about pollinators in Ireland, about the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan. Just lastly then to say about this track and progress, and I think that's incredibly important. And sometimes when initiatives start, they don't do this stage, which I think is a real shame. And perhaps because within the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan, it wasn't something that we had to do, it was something that we decided would be a good thing to do. That maybe that's why it's been a bigger part of it. So tracking progress or measuring success is a huge part of the Pollinator Plan. And you can do that in various ways. There's short-term, medium-term, and then long-term. So in the short term, it's having the plan itself and it's buy-in for that plan. In the medium term, it's the food and shelter going back into the landscape. And then in the long term, it's increases in the pollinators themselves. And it's that long term, and it's those long term changes that we measure in the National Biodiversity Data Centre. So, in 10, 15, 20 years, the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan will only have been a success if there are more bumblebees, more solitary bees, more insects, more healthy honeybees. But in the short term, so that's having a plan, really, we've been overwhelmed by the amount of support that we've had right from the very start. Say there are now 100+ partner organisations, really good collaboration between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And of the 81 actions at the end of year 4, 96% were completed or in train. In terms of the medium term, so that's returning food and shelter to the landscape, this is a bit difficult to track, but we have developed a special mapping system in the National Biodiversity Data Centre called Actions for Pollinators. So this system allows anyone to go in and say what action they've taken and to put it onto the map so that you can see pollinator-friendly habitat building up again across the island. You can search by different types. You can just see where councils have done something, where gardens have done something, where businesses. You can also search by the type of action. So you can see where there are areas of reduced mowing, reduced pesticide use, and so on. And again, you can see what's happening within the system at any one time, you know, which sites are being logged by different sectors and which actions are most popular. You can click on any of these dots and it'll show you the information behind it. So again, it doesn't give, you know, private details, but it shows you what's happening at each site. So it's a good way to provide recognition to people and also a good way to share knowledge so you can see what other people are doing. Very easy to add your site. You just draw a polygon, you say what type of site it is, and then you're given options so you can say what you've done in accordance with the recommended actions in the respective guideline document. So really the All Ireland Pollinator Plan, it's about everyone coming together to try and make a difference. And I could probably talk about any one of those sectors because people have really bought into it. There's a huge amount of enthusiasm and, you know, a real willingness to help in Ireland. Just to give you a few of the key successes, and then, you know, you can ask me questions at the end. We've managed to reach all 3,200 primary schools in the Republic of Ireland. That's thanks to linking with SuperValue. So they sponsored a campaign called Save the Bees. So really high quality resources on pollinators, you know, why they're important, how you can help, went out to all primary schools in Ireland in 2020. We have a special framework for councils. So a council can formally sign up as a partner of the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. And in doing that, they agree to take a certain number of actions on the public land that they're responsible for. And they also agree to report back each year on what they've done. So at the minute, 55% of all councils across the island have already formally partnered and agreed to take actions. The National Biodiversity Data Centre received EU funding through the Department of Agriculture for a big project on farmland, which is running for 5 years and started last year. And the idea with that is to show that all farms, regardless of type or intensity level, can become more pollinator friendly. So we're working with a group of 40 farmers to show how that would work and how it might be rolled out on larger scales. 162 local communities across Ireland have become more pollinator friendly. And we're very fortunate in Ireland that we have an existing structure, an existing community network structure called Tidy Towns. So we've been able to add a special pollinator award to that existing structure, and that's been fantastic. So those 162 local communities have taken a whole range of pollinator actions and really made their local community much, much more pollinator friendly. We also have a special framework for businesses. So a business can sign up as a supporter of the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. Again, they agree to take a certain number of actions each year and to report back on what they've done. And again, you know, huge amount of interest in that. At the minute, there's 246 business supporters, or there were when I did this presentation on Monday. There's now 248. There's so much interest, which is super. And also, you know, thankfully, the All Ireland Pollinator Plan has been regarded as a success story internationally, and we have been working with the EU to talk about whether, you know, it could be used as a template for other member states. Just to say, to finish up, just say, look into the future. The first phase of the All Ireland Pollinator Plan ends at the end of this year. So hopefully we'll have another. The second plan will run from 2021 to 2025. And really, you know, we want to come together in Ireland to try and build on what we've done so far and to make that as ambitious as we can. On the website, there is a little Survey Monkey form. So if you have any ideas for things that we should do, perhaps there's something happening in your own country that you think we should think about, please do let us know, because, you know, sometimes it's people from different countries or different disciplines that have really good ideas that we could take on board. So all the information's on pollinators.ie, and thank you again for inviting me to give this talk, and I'd be very happy to answer questions if you have them.
These are always the kind of measurement of how real nature behaves, how it reacts and interacts with us, with a kind of crown of a civilization, as we used to call ourselves. Hopefully we will be let's say, put in a real value, not overvalue our role, even after COVID crisis and different aspects of today. Thank you very much. Well done, Una. This is just one thing, but maybe there is any question from the people who may ask it online by typing it, or also, of course, you can do this privately later on the emails. But also, if you have a question now to raise, then please do it. Una, since we wait for questions. So there are at least very many funds to you. But what I'd like to ask is the way you told the constant need for whatever, good or bad, but dialogue with everyone who is involved. And once again, my kind of journalist's observations is that always when you have issues like environment or, let's say, development, if it's the case with two ends, it ends up with some revolutionary, disappointing situations which causes a new war. There is a kind of tendency to put it even in the press, like blacks and whites and pros and contras and things like that. So how you manage this constant dialogue, even if not everyone agrees, but then not to really go away from the negotiating table? If there is a special clue or a special technique you learned actually during your many years, I understand.
I'm not sure that I've got the secret to that, other than that I think it's really important to keep dialogue open, so and to always be transparent. So we've always tried to be transparent in terms of what's happening within the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. We've always tried to be really clear on what we're ever asking anyone to do. And we've always tried to be realistic and pragmatic. So I think it's that, isn't it? It's trying to see things from both sides of view and meet somewhere in the middle. You know, it's always better. There's a saying, it's always better to move forward and stumble than sit still and grumble. And it's sort of that.
Do you think the measure of community is also important? I know that people live in a very close but still not interconnected with whole island communities, and then on a level of each another small county or something, it seems like sometimes people are more willing to achieve something on our surroundings, not on a whole country. So when you do this full country approach, what do you think is the best thing you make it out of it? Because my own country is actually, from the territory point of view, more or less your country's size. Nevertheless, we are smaller on a number of inhabitants, but still I'm just thinking about, you know, Italy or Spain. They are actually also doing this on a level of plus minus 8 million, in case of Italy I think it's more, people, not trying to achieve whole country, which in your case is actually the number of whole country's inhabitants. So what about measurements of how deep and wide you can go with things you want to promote?
Yeah, it's a good question, and in some ways it's unfair to answer on behalf of Ireland, because, you know, it's different. You know, it's much easier because we're a smaller country and we've got a much lower population, so it is easier. I think it's important that people participate on all levels. We're very lucky in Ireland that there's a very vibrant local community sector. You know, so that was already there. So it's very easy to mobilize those existing networks and then to build it up. But often it's about engaging with individuals, but making sure they know they're part of something bigger. You know, so if you want to make farmland more pollinator friendly, you have to engage with all farmers, you know, and it really is starting at that level, but it's making sure that each farmer knows what it is that you're asking them to do and why they're being asked to do it. So I suppose I think it's more about communication and making sure that everyone feels they're part of something, being transparent about what's happening and tracking progress all the time. So I'm not sure there's a silver bullet. And again, you know, of course it's easier in Ireland. You know, we have a small population. You know, it'd be much more difficult, you know, if you were a very populous country. Also in Ireland, there's slightly less politics, believe it or not, you know, when you're in that situation, you know, so there are less special interest groups, so it's easier to just go ahead and do things.
Well, nevertheless, I think it's exactly in Irish fairy tales that you can have this story of the silver bullet, isn't it? So you told you don't have it at all, huh? That's a pity thing, a bad discovery for me. I was always believing that it exists, and once you go to Ireland, you can, you know.
Oh no, that's true. You're right. You're right. I take it back. It's true.
Good. Well, anyway, thank you for being, and for you saw already so many people admiring your way you explain it and your attitude towards the thing you are doing. So this is exactly what we are looking today for, these best practice examples, and this is the beauty of the continent, that we can share it even digitally. And when you will come here to the north of Europe one day during the project, you will discover how good is our honey. They say that it's even more full with different minerals and something than in the south, because the period and the beans can fly around and get the honey is much shorter, so they have to do very intensively their job. Well, I don't know. I'm not measuring or overestimating anything. I'm just proposing, when you come, we offer you a local honey as well. Thank you. Thank you. Now, good practice for even more southern story. It's Italian colleague, and these will be now guidelines for accessing the soil ecosystem servicing in urban environment and the management of it, which is even more and more important with every day. Fabrizio Ongaro is a National Council of Research fellow, and he works for Institute of Bioeconomy in Italy. So Fabrizio, I saw you were the first after the lunch coming back, so you are probably very much willing to explain your good practice to us, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to share the good practices that we developed in the last few years within the framework of a European funded LIFE program. And my talk would be about soil. And soil, although they are a very important key element to support biodiversity, as soil worldwide hosts more than 25% of organisms living on this planet, actually is something that people do not understand and relate it immediately, just because they are right under our feet. So they are not easy to communicate it, and changes cannot easily be monitored. So now I'm gonna share my screen and start my presentation. Just a second. Yes, here we go. So the presentation is about the good practice that we developed within the framework of the SOS for Life project between 2016 and 2020. The project is about to end this summer. And it's a demonstration project that aims to contribute to the reinforcement at municipal scale of the European orientation about soil protection and urban regeneration, with reference to the guideline on best practice to mitigate and compensate soil sealing, which were released in 2012. And this project has a goal to provide tools and rules and approach that aim to implement in advance the communication by the EU community on no-let-land take by 2020. According to the roadmap to resource sustainability. The partnership of this LIFE project see as a leader the municipality of Forlì and two more municipalities in the region of Northeast Italy of Emilia-Romagna. We are the research scientific partner in the project, and the other partners are the region of Emilia-Romagna, the Legambiente NGO for environmental protection, the consortium of constructor in Emilia-Romagna region. The objective of the direction of urban regulation and implementation tools, which balance of no net land take in new building up area within the municipality. The definition
So, dear Fabrizio, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can I ask you to switch off your video so then we can keep a quality of your audio because something went wrong with the line. We saw your presentation, but we didn't hear you anymore. So hopefully you can actually come back. I even don't see you in the system, so it seems like we lost you from the network at all. Fabrizio, if you are there. You know what we're gonna do now? Can you please leave the system and come back again? Sometimes when you restart your net connection,
I am here.
Here you are. Okay, you can hear us, but can we ask you to switch off your camera, but of course not the microphone, so we can hear you but don't see you. Then the quality of the sound will increase, and because we were starting to lose your not the presentation was there, but your voice. Sorry for this. It's far away in between Italy and Latvia. Maybe yes, move it closer to good idea. Closer to Wi-Fi router.
To the Wi-Fi router. So.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the. Okay, this is the way how we can discover your institute. I understand.
Actually, I'm at home, but.
Oh, okay.
As everybody.
Your home looks like an institute, so it's full with the books.
That's my father library. So, can you see my presentation, or you just see me?
Yes, and it's much better. Thank you for actually a quick solution. Great. So continue. We didn't hear actually just last a few sentences. So okay to follow.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So I was describing briefly the objectives of the life of the project. So the definition of urban regulation and implementation tools to ensure the balance of non-net land take at municipality area, the definition of rules and incentives to support the urban regeneration, the definition of procedures for monitoring and evaluate land take dynamics and its impact on the provision of ecosystem service from soils, the definition of methodology for the detection, the evaluation, and the mapping of soil ecosystem services provided by urban and peri-urban soil. Three examples of intervention of soil desealing, so remove of the pavement, the concrete, and the asphalts in true urban areas to reinstall new soil and recreate urban public green areas. And then, of course, all of this comes with the promotion of knowledge and awareness at large scale about the social and economic consequences of losing soil due to land take. So the project is articulating in a number of actions. And what I'm talking about now is the action B, measuring costs and impacts of land take at municipality scale, and in particular on the guidelines for assessing soil ecosystem service in urban environment and their management. Just a very brief outlook on the land use dynamics in Italy and land use change between the 60s of the previous century and 2017. We have four major fluxes from agricultural to land to artificial land, so urbanization, and as you can see in this summary table, this accounts for almost always more than 50% of the change that occur in our land use at national scale, with an increase and a maximum between the year 2000 and 2006, where 84% of land use change were actually due to urbanization. Then there was a slightly decline in the recent decades, but still it's nearly 60%. While at the beginning of the century, and especially after with the boom of the 60s, we had an abandonment of agricultural land, which got back to nature, but this was localized mostly on the mountain area, and coupled with some intensification of agricultural practice in the lowlands and in the plain areas, which all the sum of these processes led to a percentage at the national scale of land take, which means of tilled soil, which is about 8% in 2018. What you can see below is the dynamics of land take in one of the municipality partner of the LIFE project, Forlì, in Emilia-Romagna, and you can see that between 860 to 2016, we basically lost more than 22% of natural soil to urbanization. The guidelines are meant for urban planner, so for municipality staff and technicians, in order to develop and make develop tools to support the decision-making chain in urban planning, and to make possible the best use of available information about soils. This information is generally in Italy is organized on a regional basis. So each region has its own soil database, mapping system, and soil survey stuff. But overall, there is a good coverage. And so the purpose of these guidelines is to provide a methodology to assess the ecosystem service provided by soil and how to implement them in the urban planning procedures. We have tested 3 different approaches, which depends on the resources, economic resources, and available data and access to soil data. The first one, which require new fresh data, which means financial resource, is based on a soil survey in the urban area, followed by soil analysis, mapping, and assessment of the ecosystem services. The second one is the use of existing soil database and soil map, usually in shapefile vector format, using information from benchmark soils profiles and related analytical data to end with an ecosystem service assessment. And third case is one of the best case scenario, I would say, but this is more rare. In Italy, is very few organizations as at regional level soil data and soil information available in this format. So where map are already available for soil properties and specific functions that are at the base of the delivery of ecosystem services. So in this case, the assessment is kind of straightforward. In all cases, the soil data are used to build a set of indicator of ecosystem service provision. And we have always to keep in mind that the approach and the data must be coherent with the scale of investigation and implementation and planning. This is the conceptual framework that is at the background of our approach. So the soil is considered to be a natural capital, which to some extent in the city, urban soil are considered natural any longer. So there is artificial capital, which are characterized by a set of properties, such as their depth, the slope, the aspect, the texture, stoniness, soil organic carbon content, structure, bulk density, hydraulic properties, and so on. These different characteristics are at the base of a number of processes, such as water cycles, nutrient cycles, biological activity, and so on, which are results in functions such as the support of human activities, habitat for biodiversity, regulation of fluxes for gas and water, sequestration of organic carbon, storage of water, and provision of food and fibers and raw materials. All of this results in direct and indirect benefits to the human communities, providing a number of ecosystem services, which are usually classified in terms of provisioning, supporting, regulating, and cultural. Those services altogether results in benefits such as food security, environmental quality, social stability, geohydrological protection, urban quality, and well-being. Of course, there is a control on this flow and control on those processes, which are under external controls, such as natural events, or also man-driven events, such as change in land use, change in management, and urban planning, so city sprawling. These are the quick list of the 7 ecosystem services that we address in our guidelines for the good practice. They belong to different categories: supporting, regulating, provisioning, and they contribute to ecosystem service, providing specific functions. And for each functions, we identified a set of indicators, and using available data or data derived from specific soil survey, we calculated the indicator. That calculation is explained in detail in the guideline. I'm not getting into detail of the calculation of each indicator right now for the sake of time, but it's important to point out that each indicator is then normalized, so to rank from 0 to 1, where 0 doesn't mean that the service is not provided, but in that specific area, it is at a minimum. And as an opposite, when it's ranked as 1, that's the maximum provision service that the soil is capable to provide. So this is a first example that we developed during the lifetime of the project, with a specific soil survey of the urban soil of the municipality of Carpi. In Carpi, the soil ceiling is about 15% against a regional average of about 10% and a provincial average of 12%. Within the urban area, we sampled 179 location where we analyze the soil and took measurements. Why it is important to have a specific soil survey in the city? Just because in the city it's very difficult to find soil in their natural condition. Soil in the city are usually disturbed soil, where land filling and with addition of soil material coming from elsewhere. So all the red dots that you can see in the map on the left side of the slides are actually soil which have some degree of material coming from somewhere else. So this is important, and this is also the limitation that we have to face, we have to deal when specific survey are not possible. So from the soil analysis, we reconstruct the continuum of the soil properties, the natural stock, and then using locally calibrated pedotransfer function, we estimated the soil functions which are at the base of service provision, as for example, available water capacity or hydraulic conductivity or bulk density. And those are then the resulting indicator for the different ecosystem services: biodiversity, buffering capacity, carbon stock, agricultural production, water regulation, and water storage. In order to provide easy to understand document and tools for evaluating soils, we come with a sort of synthetic maps. And this is an example of this, using the concept of hotspots of ecosystem service provision, which means that for each service, we highlight the location, which are in red in the 6 smaller maps that identify area where the provision of ecosystem service is characterized by a value of the indicator associated to it above the 75% of the observed distribution of the indicator values. When you combine together all the information from the individual indication, you have a final hotspot maps, which highlights the number of high valuable service provided by soil at each location. In this case, the resolution of the grid is 1 hectare. So you can see that even in the center of the city, there are areas where we have up to 4, or 3 or 4 or 5 appear high quality provision of ecosystem service due to the presence of soil. So this is a first example of how all this information can be concentrated in a single maps to be used to support planning decision. For example, if we have, like in this case, 4 different areas to be built, you can associate to each area an average value of hotspots per unit area, and you can rank the area in terms of value of the soil and make more informed decision in terms of priority of which area is going to be built and which area is going to stay green. The second level of data availability is the one that relies on available soil and data and maps, which are stored in the public database, in this case of the Regione Emilia-Romagna. So these are existing soil map, the traditional soil map with polygons in vector format. At each polygons is populated with a number of soil profile, which data are available for assessment of the ecosystem service that we selected. And again, we have agricultural production, supporting biodiversity, carbon stock sequestration, water regulation, buffering capacity, and climate regulation within the municipality of Forlì. And those spider graphs that we have shows the synergies and trade-offs between among services, among the different services considered, and for the different map unit. Each spikes of the graph represents a polygon on the map. Again, this information, which might be a little bit confusing for a planner, can be synthesized in a single document, in a single map. This is a different approach compared to the one I presented about the hotspots. This is a soil quality map where it's the single values of the indicator for each mapping units are sum. The sum value is, again, the overall sum for each polygon is normalized, so to get an interval from 0 to 1. And then there is a rank of those sums. And again, a quality class from 1 to 5 is attributed to each soil, to each mapping unit, ranking from 1, the high quality, to 5, the least quality. It is also possible to highlight on the map so-called no-build areas where specific indicators are extremely high. So where the ecosystem service provided the soil is particularly valuable. For example, water regulation along the river stream in the southeast part of the map, or agricultural production in the northwest part of the map. And another potential application of these indicators is to derive the so-called soil compensation index for new building house in the perspective of to enforce regeneration policies and compensation measures at municipality levels, which means that when I seal and new soil, I have to set sealed soil somewhere else in order to reestablish a balance in the flow of ecosystem service and to get to the zero net land take, which is requested by EU norms. So in this case, we have a building site where three different soils with different quality are present, and we can calculate an overall compensation index of 0.668 in this case, that comes from the weighted average of the different normalized indicator. And we can see that in the municipality of Forlì, soil of different class have different compensation index. And as a consequence, if I want to compensate this loss of ecosystem service, I can use 0.69 hectares of class 1 up to 2.26 of class 5. We also provide the information to make an economic evaluation of the different ecosystem services. So in each of the 3 municipalities, based on this approach that I've just shown, we calculate in terms of biophysical units, the ecosystem services, and then we, following the methodology which is implemented at national level, we provide an economic evaluation and a unit value per hectare. In the case of the municipality of Forlì, for example, we calculated that between 1985 and 2016, we estimate an average loss of soil ecosystem services equal to 172 million euro due to soil sealing in this short range of time, associated to a land take of 4.6, which is not coupled with an equivalent increase of population, which actually is constantly decreasing. I'm not a big fan of economic evaluation because soils by definition is a finite and not renewable resource. So one is sealed, is gone, and it's not coming back. And so it's very reductive to attach to soil a monetary value. Furthermore, soil provides ecosystem services that by nature are defined as intangible, and as such they are not valuable, such as cultural ecosystem service, sense of place, health, well-being, aesthetic value, educational value, landscape attractiveness, and so on. Nevertheless, for the different soil-based ecosystem service, it is possible to estimate the values, a market value, for example, and use values, as we have seen already this morning, which are strictly linked to the soil property as a natural capital. So in order to do that, soil properties need to be known and assessed. Soil properties vary from soil to soil and are influenced by external drivers such as land use and management practice. For example, those are the figures that we calculated for the 3 partners municipalities of the project for the 7 ecosystem services considered in the guidelines. So the value per hectare per year range from a maximum of 300,000 euro to a minimum of 268 euro in those 3 municipalities. And this is the last approach, which is based on existing map of soil functions and properties on a raster format. This is a particular case of the Regione Emilia-Romagna, which is a partner of the project and which has a long and sound tradition of soil survey and soil databases in Italy. I would say it's the leader region in this field, and the first one to begin back in the 80s to systematically survey and map the soil of the region. So there is a number of high valuable and detailed information which is already available and freely available to the public for download and use. And so we were able to estimate the different ecosystem service to the regional scale, the same sets of ecosystem service. And then with this approach, we provided information for all the municipality of the region in the plain area. We are now working on the hill and the mountain area, but this will be an addition of the years to come. And then there is a direct link to another actions of the project, which is responsible for the release of an informative system for evaluating and monitoring land take and its impact at a municipality scale. So basically, this is a geospatial data interchange platform on an open source support in JavaScript object notation. And the efforts here has been to harmonize all the different planning documents at municipality level, which are kind of different, and there is not yet a complete alignment in the way those planning documents are produced and organized. But once harmonized, those information are associated to land use, to soil sealing, to soil ecosystem services, and soil quality. They are continuously updated, and they are stored in a tool that can be used by each municipality, not only the 3 municipalities of the project, to make queries about the dynamics of land take and its impact on soil ecosystem service. In this screenshot, for example, at municipality level, the case of Forli again, for the year 2006, this is the overall description of the different reason for land take, so which is the change in land use that ultimately result into land take and soil sealing. And this system can be used at different levels, can be used at regional level, at provincial level, at municipality level, or group of municipality for planning, and provide the user information about the cause of land take and on a foreseen use of sealed area, such as residential, industrial, infrastructure. It's also possible to select specific area and to query for the soil quality. So, for example, you can draw a polygon on the screen in a specific part of the municipality, and then you have, as a result, the share of different class of soil quality within the polygon. You can export and save those results as PDF or as shape file or as open source format, JavaScript. So to make then further elaboration you might be interested in. And you can calculate the degree of soil sealing expressed as percentage, or the single ecosystem services or the overall soil quality for each municipality of the region Emilia-Romagna. The system stores the data about the 6 ecosystem services considered in the project, and also the overall map of the soil quality index. Information of soil ecosystem services are then important because they are the key elements of urban planning towards non-net land take strategies, because they allow to evaluate any residual transformation with greater awareness on soil and the ecosystem services it provides, and so to direct the planner's choice to the most compromised or poor quality soils, safeguarding the best soil and their services. And part of these tools has also been integrated with their already existing information systems available in Emilia-Romagna to create WebGIS application and to organize and view map and data more easily. So there is a direct flow of information at this point from the experience of the project to the regional level, and the hope is that someone will copy us soon. So this is the last slide with my take-home message. So in the evaluation of the good practice at the voice strategic relevance, this is our consideration as a project team, that soil is no longer to be considered as simply as a physical platform to support urban infrastructure, but as a natural capital at the base of the delivery of ecosystem services, resulting in direct and indirect benefits to humans. And this will represent really a cultural shift and a radical change in the ordinary practice of urban planning. This would in turn enhance mitigation of the effect of the ongoing climate crisis and increase the resilience of the urban ecosystem to its effects. I thank you very much once again for your attention and for giving me the opportunity to share our results with you today.
Actually, for being so, let's say, interesting, and especially from the point of view of European Union new strategy, which was actually announced like 2 weeks before, this biodiversity strategy. I think many people are reading that this is for flora and fauna, and forget that actually in this strategy, the very, let's say, the third pressure point is actually about the soil. So would you please also comment of importance of understanding, or how good actually, let's say, a European level, the local communities and even farmers themselves are at this addressing the issue as important, which is as important as the flora and fauna and the prevention of loss of certain species that we usually understand of biodiversity, the safeguarding species. But here you're talking about actually the very base of it. So how good is this echo when you talk? Do you hear the echo in society or in Brussels corridors?
Yes, we do. There is a mismatch with what is happening at the bottom, I mean, at local level with local communities, and at the very top, because what is missing actually is everything in the middle. I mean, in Brussels, there is a strong awareness. People have a strong awareness, but local administrators and local politicians still has not. I mean, they really struggle. And especially those days in the, let's say, in the post-COVID-19 crisis here in Italy, everyone is really struggling to go back to normal, even simplifying and getting rid of rules in order to trigger the economy once again on the same old tracks. So everyone is talking about let's start building again without any constraints. Let's put new infrastructure without any proper environmental assessment of the impact it's going to have, not even without an assessment of the effective utility they're going to have to the local community. And so it's really what we're really struggling within the project was really those cultural and language related issues that have already been mentioned, just because as soil scientists, we have to interface with a policymaker, with architect, planner, engineer, which has completely different mind setting. They really don't have the perception of soil as a natural body, as an integral part of the ecosystems. And so this is really a strong effort that we are making, but it's very effective. The work that we've been made with schools, with farmer association, with NGOs. And so there is really a wave that is rising bottom up, and hopefully that will reach our administrator soon.
And then I also, since I'm just encouraging, if there are extra questions, please raise your virtual hand. But I was thinking about, with a great curiosity, of what you've been saying about the compensation mechanism of this soil compensation index idea. So tell me honestly, you were showing us the people who are, let's say, developing their private house, the property builders or developers or even land owners themselves. But don't you think that on a basis of this strategy and formula, these are not really more than farmers who should, let's say, be aware that in the future that might be reality, and they should spare some money for possible compensations they've been probably will be asked in the nearest future to compensate, let's say, a damage of what they did by farming too intensively?
Well, I mean, intensive farms and farm management was not a direct object of our approach here, which was most centered in, let's say, peri-urban area. So at the interface between agricultural and farming and the urban sprawl. So it's the core of the problem, at least in some part of Italy, where urban sprawl and sprawl dynamics are really unstoppable, and they are really eating land on a daily basis to a really unthinkable amount, is that it is the policy that has to intervene and to put a clear boundary. And it is being made. For example, in Emilia-Romagna, they said that by 2030, from today, in the next 10 years to come, we are not allowed to seal more than 3% of what is already been sealed. So this is the maximum amount of tolerable loss from now to the future. So no more of that can be taken. But as we have this hierarchy of policy that are always not coherent with each other, actually at the national level, there are strategic priorities that are eating soil at a much faster pace without taking into account at all local regulations or regional regulations. So there is an ongoing conflict of competence between those, the level of decision making, which are not easy to solve at all.
All the best of what you are doing, and of course all the best to all Italians that are really coming more to normal than we in Latvia. We say that we just switched back to normal from today, which is actually different in normality that we experienced. And well, really guys, you did the worst part of it, what we've been going through. Now we've been going through actually whole the day of very nice stories, I think inspiring stories, even if I'm just reading your chat here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is what is the main message each and other ways. So please be friends also by exchanging your emails and using them. Here we still have two speakers who will also refer to how all these skills probably that we learned today will be used by a very project we are involved in. So Enrico Doblas, he works as a research coordinator for Public Center for Ecology Research and Applied Solutions, located in Barcelona. And Enrique, you have now the floor to sum up the day, please.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes.
And thank you, as you say, thank you to our representatives, the people that explain about these incredible good practices. Thank you very much to all the attendants, because it was a long webinar to be attended. And in any case, it was very, very interesting. We have very different practices, not only in the objectives of each one of them, but also in the locations. And it's very interesting because sometimes one of these good practices could work very well in a location, and then when we try to export it, it's not as easy. I was thinking in the first of all, the one that Carles explained, that worked in Catalonia, but maybe in another region, they don't have this coordination. And I was very happy to the question that you make it. Thank you, that it was interesting. What happens when politicians change and they say, well, you have to be there, make another plan. But you also say, well, and if you have to be there, I mean, you have to maintain your practices over and over the years. But it was everything interesting. The one from Latvia, very well explained, and the successful practice of Ireland that we have seen, it has the best comments of all. And last but not the least, of course, Fabrizio, I'm also a soil researcher, and of course I find very interesting all these practices. I like the way he always claimed that it's difficult to put money into these values, because for him soil is as a basic value is the problem. Each one of us, our specialty is the most valuable thing, and it's difficult to put a value, but we have to do it to share it with different audiences, with different kind of citizens, because our interest is not the same of the common interest. Well, I want to say, as I'm in charge of the communication of this magnificent project progress, and I want to say that all these presentations, if you are interested, will be available in the webpage of the Riga Technical University, of course, also in the webpage of the project. We will also try to put online the video that it was recorded of this interesting meeting. I hope so, because not everybody was available to listen. And what can I say? Also, please, in the webpage, you have other things that are interesting. Not only these good practices in very well structured reports, but also you have news about how ecosystem services could help us in very different aspects, challenges of our century. You have also the newsletter. Please subscribe if you find interest in the project. We are not going to bother you with a lot of newsletters, so the ones that you are going to receive for sure are going to be very interesting. This was the end. This technical meeting was the end of a semester. that it was focused in the measurement of these ecosystem services. But there are other very interesting things that will be tackled in the next semesters, and the next one will be integration. So it's more related to this political integration of these measurements, of these practices, how we put them in the political map, how we try to make it possible. Because in the end, politicians and decision makers are the ones that have the power to put this into real practice. So from my part, this is all. I'm very happy that I have to congrats the Riga Technical University for the idea of having this this great presentation, this team behind. Thank you very much for the showman, and nothing else from my side. Thank you very much to everybody.
There was Sanda. She was behind all of us for coming today, and she was listening to your thank yous. So from the part of Riga Technical University, it was actually the face and the computer and the fingers and the brain of Sanda, and she will also sum up the day, because she was the one who was nervous if we will be in time, if we will be online, and everything went more or less okay. Actually, the internet is very good all around the continent, so congratulations, Sanda, was even that reality. So please, your sum up of today, Sanda. So you are working for Riga Technical University, and actually you are the leader of the part in the project which is governed by Riga Technical University, right?
Yes.
Yes. So
thank you, Ansis,
thank you
for your good words. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear partners, we have spent online together great and fruitful day to make the Progress First international training workshop happen, despite extraordinary situation we are still facing. Thank you for your participation and the interesting and useful exchanges during this workshop. I really appreciate your effort to make this discussion interactive, and I wish we could have more discussions if this could happen face to face. Today we have shared valuable experiences on the ecosystems valuation and methodologies applied in different parts of Europe. With the successful completion of this workshop, we are able to achieve our goals of sharing best practices and disseminating information across borders. I believe that this discussion has pointed out some crucial issues which are really needed to avoid future ecosystems conflicts and develop new approaches in ecosystems planning from transregional aspect. The collaboration in the framework of Progress project among our partnering regions and with involved stakeholders reflects the central message of this training workshop: the importance of working together to build a dynamic skills training and to develop better policies. This workshop is a part of our continuing efforts to enhance and promote knowledge, training and experience for the conservation and management of ecosystems. There are many uncertainties in our ecosystem today, but I'm more certain of one thing. If we use our experiences and knowledge at the right moments, it can inspire actions that change the world for better. I hope that this seminar will spark conversations and open doors for new collaborations among all involved actors in the nearest future. I believe that the joint action can advance the ecosystems and provision of ecosystem services and create a more sustainable world. Once again, thank you all for your time, participation and contribution.
Well, thank you, Sanda, and also thank you for choosing this digital way for a very beginning. I know you've been struggling how to now do in a time of COVID, and well, there is a digital way, so hopefully we also enjoyed these digital conversations. Nevertheless, this will never exclude the real-life conversation with the real projects to be visited, great examples to be admired in a place, and you also saw how many nice things we can show here in the north of Europe, so hopefully one day we meet in person. So now we end with a happy end, and of course you may now take your responsibilities in your offices. Even this is the beauty of this kind of full day session, which actually didn't meant for you to travel around the continent. So thank you. We are so happy that you were, all of you actually, who came as a, in the morning. It was 60 something participants. We still are almost 50 here for whole the day. So I think it just shows how you know, focused you are on this issue, which is on a great importance. I even have my personal touch. My grandmother used to be a soil researcher, so I will tell her what is now a reality of the 21st century, because she ended ended her behavior, like her professional life in a previous century. Now, anyway, meet you in person one day. Goodbye. Thank you. We end up here. Thanks.